People say the little man can't get ahead. It's harder than ever in America today. Inflation, the housing market, the guy in the White House. And what I've found is you can get ahead in America today if you just follow a really simple, controversial upstream path. But most people want to make it more complicated. They think they're smarter than that. There's pride, there's fear, there's greed. And then people call into the show at 60 going, I'm screwed. What do I do?
So that in the simplest terms would be your advice to make any viewer watching right now a millionaire.
Yeah. If you just follow these principles, you will get there. And you will have the things on the other side. I say this is going to be jarring. This is not going to be what you want to hear.
George, welcome back to the Iced Coffee Hour. Really happy that you're here. Our last episode, I think, is it like 600,000
It did so
views?
well. Everybody loved it.
Everyone wanted to follow
Some hot
up.
takes.
So,
we had a great time. Thank you for your generosity. And I think it was a fun conversation.
I think what's really interesting that people really appreciate it is that we have very different views on debt, on credit cards, on finances. You have your way, I have my way, and we're able to have a good conversation about it. And I think people really like that. So we're going to dive even further into that because you made a whole book about how bad credit cards are and how you should never use them. And I was reading through it, and we have some disagreements that we probably have to hash out
Can I just
today.
say, Graham, let me remind you
I am on the back of the book.
that you were on the back of the book. And here's what Graham had to say. George dives into financial topics that should be required learning for absolutely everyone. Whether you're just starting or on your path of financial freedom, this book has every tidbit to help optimize every dollar. Signed, Graham Stephan, real estate investor, YouTube personality. So first of all, thank you for endorsing it. That means
You're
a lot
welcome.
that you put your stamp of approval on it.
You're welcome.
Even though we don't agree on all things finances. But
Exactly.
we have a very mutual, respectful relationship, and it's been so great getting to know you guys over the years.
And we're going to dive into it today.
You said chapter 3 in your book was the strongest argument against debt that you think you've ever heard.
Against credit cards.
Against credit cards that you've ever heard.
In the credit cards chapter.
I'm just going to recite some of the things that you said in this chapter so people
boy.
get an idea of what you said, okay?
It's like a court of law. He's like, I'm going to use your own words against you.
Now, you claim these credit card companies lure you in using heavy metal cards to impress your friends. Congratulations, you've been approved, as though it's a good thing. They say, we are pleased to announce we have increased your credit limit. They give you rewards. They give you sign-up bonuses. They give you discounts. They give you exclusive lounge access. You say statistically 80% of people reading this have a credit card. So 80% of you viewers have a credit card conducted by Ramsey Solutions.
This guy knows his sources.
Yeah. And you also said 49% of people can't pay off their monthly credit card bill. In 2023, there is an outstanding debt of credit cards of over $1 trillion spread over 55 million households, with each household balance averaging over $14,000 and an average interest rate of 22%.
Those are all facts. Those are none of my real opinions. But yes, that's all accurate. It's in the book. After reading that, just as a bystander.
I think it's interesting because I never put the two and two together until you wrote that. The way credit cards frame their language of saying, congratulations, you've been approved. This is a great thing. Look at what we just did. I do think that's interesting. I mean, that's marketing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They want to frame it as a good thing. And it can be. It can be a good thing, depending on the credit card that you get approved for.
Well, I think it's more about the emotional validation we get from, like, they're giving me more credit limit. It's like, well, what does that really mean? They're giving me more access to debt. Now, if that's the game you want to play, that's fine. But for most people, when you ask them what their financial goals are, they would say, well, to get out of debt, which is such a hilarious contradiction that for the average consumer, their singular goal is to get out of debt, and they're getting excited when they have access to more debt and they think it's winning because that's the scoreboard we've created in America.
Do you think, though, that could be a selection bias, that the people who are getting into personal finance, step number one for a lot of those people who are just starting is debt. Get out of the debt.
Well, we tell them to succeed in America financially, you got to have a good credit score. And so how do you do that? Well, people will open a credit card and they swipe the card, going into debt even temporarily. Oh. At the heart of it, I just think people aren't winning as much as they think they are. And the credit card companies love when people think they're winning.
So do you think this is something, though, where if you're good at it, you could win?
Yes, but that's kind of like saying if you're good at gambling, you should gamble. And everyone goes like, well, I think I'm good. I won that one time. And so they sort of self-select themselves and go like, I'm going to be the guy who does it well.
I think it's different. I think if you're good at card counting, so if you're good at being a winning player, then I think that's different because the game isn't set to defeat you in credit cards and stuff like that. Like, sure, a lot of people do end up losing money, but every tool that you need to get ahead is in the system, right?
See, like
Maybe.
The way I think about it,
define getting ahead. That's really what it comes down to.
It could be similar to starting a business, let's just say, because you say it's a money-losing proposition. Well, starting a business is money-losing for a lot of people, but some succeed. So couldn't it be the same way. If you know what you're doing and you're successful at it, you can do really well. You can make a lot of money in both a business and with credit cards.
Yeah, I mean, some people do game the system, and so I talk about that at what cost does that come? Because it comes at a cost. Credit card companies are not nonprofit charities. They're not just giving away money. And so I talk about where the money actually comes from that turns into rewards and cash back and points and all that. And as I got into it, like, it's just not pretty. It's not my opinion of like, well, it comes from this group over here. There's multiple studies from the Federal Reserve that are now showing like, oh, it's the people who are uneducated, low income, suffering the most that are funding this whole program. And it's not a moral thing to say you're a bad person if you get cash back. It's not that at all. But it doesn't make me feel like I'm winning when that's how the system works. It's just kind of gross. And so if I can opt out of it by using debit and cash, I'm opting out of it. And that's just one reason on top of many to not use the credit card.
It's interesting you turn it into a moral argument, because I've never seen it that way. If you could explain where that money is coming from and who's receiving the money, that'd be great. Like in exact terms.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Fed found that $15 billion moves from the poor, uneducated, lower income to the higher educated, wealthy. And there's billions and billions of dollars that gets moved in that way. And it's all stemming from the credit card companies. And a lot of people say, well, George, credit card companies, the money I'm getting in my cash back is from transaction fees.
It's from the interchange.
The interchange. That's what they're saying. But I actually looked at the data, and Capital One has their earnings report right there online for anyone to go check out. And it turns out it was like 75% of the earnings from Capital One's credit card revenue came from interest, not from
But now that's
transaction
Capital
interchange.
One. What about American Express?
Well, American Express is different. They have a different business model, and you know that. And so where does most of their money come from? It comes from charging the highest possible transaction fee in the industry, 3.5% to businesses when you swipe that American Express. So that's why a lot of small businesses go, we don't take Amex, because we're not going to stomach that fee and pass that on to the consumer. And so either way, it's not pretty. Amex is a different story because of their business model. You know, these charge cards, you have to pay them off at the end of the month. And so it's a different model, but for most people, the rewards cards, it's coming mostly from interest and fees, which is coming from people who can't pay it off.
Yeah, your Capital One example, I do think makes sense, because Capital One generally, besides the Venture X business card, which is pretty good sign-up bonus.
Affiliate down below.
A fantastic sign-up
That would
bonus.
be hilarious if this was brought to you by Capital One.
But no, Capital One usually is seen as like a beginner credit card where they really just send out mass mailers to just about anybody. So it would make sense that for them, their business model would be heavily reliant on people just carrying a balance because they don't know any better.
Yeah. And so I was trying to just go at it from a research standpoint versus like a here's how I feel. Because I really, truly, like, I don't think anyone's a bad person for using a credit card or that it's wrong to get cash back. I just think it's an interesting angle for people who are already kind of on the fence to go like, you're right, I'm going to opt out. And truthfully, people have reached out to me going, I didn't know that this is the case. And it finally made me cut up the card. And now I feel more free than ever. And I'm building wealth faster.
Do you think credit card companies are immoral?
I think a company is amoral in a sense. I think the people involved in it that are at the top and the way they're making money, I don't think it's the right way to make money. I think there's you can serve people in a way and run a business in such a way that it helps a lot of people. I don't think causing people to go into debt is a worthwhile business to be in. And you know, there's a lot of companies that make billions of dollars. You know, would we say Sallie Mae is a moral company, or are they evil? As a company, they're just a company. But the things they do in order to attract business, we would say is immoral. Like paying financial aid counselors and putting them on cruises in order to pitch Sallie Mae products, that's pretty gross. Putting them in call centers and making them think they're talking to a financial aid counselor when it's a Sallie Mae representative, we would say is immoral and gross. So there's practices in those industries, the way credit card companies go after us and the experimentation they do, we would say that's pretty gross. But as far as a company goes, a company's a company, and it doesn't really have a moral compass as far as that goes.
Do you think there's any way for a credit card company to do it right? For a credit card company to take what you say and say, you know what, we're going to fix the problem. It's still going to be credit, but we're going to solve these issues, every issue that you say.
Well, this lady called into the Ramsey show this week, and it was so funny. She was like, yeah, well, I'm with this nonprofit now that's helping me with my credit card debt. And Capital One is the one who told me to reach out to them. I was like, you're going to trust a credit card company to help you get out of the debt that they got you into? That makes no sense.
It does, because they want to get paid back. If they default on her, they're getting pennies on the dollar.
Which
so
is
it makes
part
sense.
Of it. They're like, well,
Hey,
if we can
we
get
want-
her money back, we'll be doing her a service. But overall, I don't trust credit card companies with a 39.5-foot pole. You know,
Do you know what the terms were of that? Like what she signed up for?
I don't know. I
I've
kept
never heard
asking
of
her.
this.
She didn't know. I was just like, this sounds like a scam. It sounds like one of these debt relief settlement companies that you
does.
sign up for, that you pay them a bunch of money and they tank your credit on purpose and then doesn't resolve the issue. So anytime you're using debt to move around, to pay off other debt, it's just you're not actually solving the root problem. And what I found is people who avoid credit card debt completely and avoid credit cards, they tend to just have more of their income at their disposal because they're not tempted. It's really hard to go into credit card debt when you don't have a credit card. That's the bottom line at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You can't spend more than you make if you can't spend more than you make.
But before we get into that, obviously, if you're watching this episode, you think financial health is incredibly important. And dare I say, I think there's something more important: physical health.
I tend to agree with that. I know for myself, I've been doing my best to get to the gym every single day throughout this last year. I feel so much better. I work a lot better. And the one thing that's actually made the biggest improvement is my diet.
Funny you say that, Graham, because that's actually my New Year's resolution. I want to get shredded, like Justin Waller type shredded. I want that 8-pack of abs. And today's sponsor, Hero, is here to help.
Hero makes my favorite foods that I want to indulge on and eat all the time, but in a very healthy, tasty way. Like for those unaware, Hero bread has become a daily staple of mine every single morning because of its soft, fluffy texture and rich flavors that make it constantly taste like it just came freshly baked out of the oven.
And what's even crazier than their flavor, Graham, is their nutrition facts. Just listen to this, guys. Their Hero tortilla, which I absolutely love, I made an amazing quesadilla out of it. 0 grams net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, 80 calories, 7 grams of protein, and 15 grams of fiber. On top of that, Graham, I made a barbecue steak sandwich with the Hero sliced white bread. It had 0 grams of net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, 45 calories, 5 grams of protein, and 11 grams of fiber.
Even for myself, I've started tracking calories lately, and this makes a huge difference because I'm not wasting calories on bread that I would buy from the store that tastes worse than what you would get with Hero bread. So you may as well just eat Hero bread instead.
So guys, at the very least, just give it a shot. I'm very confident you're going to absolutely love it, just like Graham and I. And they're also offering 10% off your entire first order at hero.com/iced.
Again, that's hero.com/iced with the link down below in the description to place your order today. And they're also going to be baking croissants for every single month in 2024. So you'll enjoy it. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the podcast.
What do you think is the root problem? Because you said you can solve it by just getting rid of your credit cards, but that doesn't necessarily, I'm assuming, solve still the root problem in which why people go into debt.
Couldn't that be akin to saying, well, get people off drugs by just eliminating drugs? If drugs didn't exist, no one would be addicted to it. Then wouldn't it just go to something else?
I mean, if you look at addiction it's a strong form. Some people have spending addictions, but for the average person, they would tell you, like, I'm not addicted to credit cards. Yeah, sure, I have 16, and I try to maximize the rewards, but I'm not addicted. And so credit cards are a different beast because we've socialized them to the point where it's so normal. And I have the quote from Dave in the book of credit cards have become the cigarette of the financial world. It's normal, but I think it's a bad habit that is slowly killing people. But it's not one of those where it's like, it's not meth. You know what I mean? Like, you can live a long time and still smoke cigarettes, and some live a long life, and they're fine, and they live normal lives. But I still think you'd be better off with your health and your financial health without it. So that's the big thesis there. And I walk through 8 different character archetypes in the book that I think will hit someone reading or listening, where they go, that's me. I consider myself the perfect spender.
All right.
I've heard. I pay off my card every month. I've never spent a dime in interest. How many times have you said that or heard that, right?
Every time.
Every time. And it makes you feel like you're winning. But here's the thing. Even if you never spent a dime in interest and you pay it off every month, that still leaves you with $0. It does not mean you're moving ahead financially. It just means you're not getting behind. And I want people to move ahead. And I think playing this game is just sort of this monopoly game created by the credit card companies to make us feel like we're winning. I'd rather you have no debt, but I think it's better to use your own money, and I think you make different decisions when you do that.
So you did make the claim that I'm guessing is based in some sort of data that if you have a credit card versus a debit card, you're prone to spending more money on a month-to-month basis with the credit card.
Yes. And I cite an MIT study that was done. It used fMRI technology, and it scanned the brain when people use credit cards. And what's wild is that not only did they say, hey, when you swipe that card, it sort of releases the brakes on spending, but not only that, it hits the accelerator and causes you to spend more, which is a pretty wild thing. They already knew that, spending without little friction, spending other people's money it's going to sort of like release the brakes a little bit. But not only that, it causes you to actually spend more on top of that, which is compounding the problem.
Now, I've seen a similar study that found when you start spending money, that you spend more money as a result of spending because you're already in a habit, regardless of credit or not. I forget what the exact study is, but a philosopher, I believe, in like the 1800s, who started looking at buying furniture.
Oh.
And he bought furniture. He bought like a new chair in his living room. And then all of a sudden, everything else looked outdated because he got the chair. So then he wanted the couch. So he got a new couch. And then the rug looks weird because those two are new and the rug's kind of, get a rug. Wardrobes are very similar. When you buy a shirt, well, now I need a new pair of pants to go with the new shirt and a new pair of shoes. And that's just a spending habit that I think is...
It's just a cascading effect.
It is, regardless of debit or credit. I think if you spend, I would like to see a study if people start spending, do they spend more because they've already spent something? It's like the floodgates have already opened.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel about it. I mean, with credit scores and credit cards, it's sort of this gateway into other types of debt. And once you have a payment on one side of your life, what's a payment on another side? What's a car payment? What's a mortgage payment? And I think we need to retrain our brain to stop thinking in terms of payments and start thinking in terms of freedom with our income. Because that's really, we say it's your greatest wealth building tool. And when you give that to lenders, even if you're paying off a card every month, you're still giving it away. And that's money that I think you would have kept more of your money if you had spent your own. And I say my sort of end thesis in the chapter is when it hurts less, it costs more. When it hurts less emotionally, which is what happens when you swipe instead of handing over $100 bills in cash, we would revolt if we had to hand over $100 bills to pay taxes every year. But because it sort of comes out of our paycheck, or when we spend, it sort of just gets swiped on a card, we don't feel the emotion of that money leaving our bank account. Just a digital number changes slightly.
It's similar with casinos and chips. I heard one of the reasons they switched to chips, I mean, not only is it easier to carry around, but because you don't associate that with money. It's a lot easier to spend chips than it is to be like, here's 100, 100, 100.
Well, think about that with credit card points. Why do you think they moved from cash back numbers to you get 150,000 points? It sounds like an amazing, huge number. Instead of going, here's $500, they go, here's 150,000 points.
Credit card companies watching this could actually do some crazy stuff with that, with marketing and saying you're going to get 1 million points. But in the fine print to say the 1 million points, that's $100.
Yeah. When I actually talked to an ex-Capital One employee, and she was talking about all the experiments they run and the A/B tests when they said, hey, when we switch to points, it causes people mentally to flip on a different part of their brain because they don't associate points versus money. It just feels like I'm winning. It feels like I'm at Chuck E. Cheese. Yeah. And so the stuff that she unpacked, it just made it even like more gross to how these credit card companies come after us to where I'm like, even if you think you're winning, you're not. And someone else is losing at the expense of you winning.
What are some of the other secrets that person told you about credit card companies?
Oh my gosh. Well, the fact that they run, Capital One in particular, runs 10,000 experiments on consumers every year. That boggled my mind. Like, there's only 365 days in a year. How is this possible? They're constantly running these A/B tests to figure out what's going to get people to spend more money. That part was pretty gross. And then just all the amount of, like, they can devalue your points at any time.
What are some of the tests they run? Did you ask
they
about
didn't
this?
get into the specifics of what they did, but it's a lot of switching the mentality and the verbiage around it. And so, but I think a lot of it is when they move from cash back to points, that there's a reason all the credit card companies have moved to talking about points and airline miles. And so I break down how the airline miles work and how much you'd actually have to spend. And it's like 50 grand in spending gets you $250 in rewards or $500. And so it's just, when people tell me I get a free flight and I spend how I normally would, I'm like, you would not normally spend $50,000 in a year.
The one counter to
income.
that is that mostly you'd be able to get those free flights with the sign-up bonus, which have a much lower spend. So let's just say your example, $750, which is about the sign-up bonus for a higher-end credit card, or like mid-tier to upper mid. Usually that would require a spending of anywhere between $4,000 to $10,000 in 3 months. So all of a sudden, then the cash back seems a lot higher when it's just a sign-up bonus versus keeping the card for years and then like year 3 spending 50 grand. Most
people do is they go like, well, I wasn't planning on spending 10 grand. Like 10 grand in 3 months is a lot because you can't, most people can't put their mortgage and utilities on there. And so we're talking about consumer spending, groceries, gas. So what do? Well, we'll eat out again this month because we got to hit the number. And so I think mentally and psychologically, they know you're going to spend more by doing this in order to get the bonus. And maybe you'll use the bonus, maybe you won't. We found a lot of people forego the bonuses, forget it expires, whatever the thing is. They're not actually utilizing it to its full capacity. To that end, it's causing people to go into debt in order to get a bonus, which then negates any reward that
Now,
could
see,
have
that I
happened.
would agree with, that a lot of the bonuses go unused, and the same thing with gift cards. There was this whole study that I read recently on gift cards of how many of them just go
Money
unused.
just sitting on there.
And it's genius from the business perspective, because essentially to them, it's a free loan. Businesses are able to get 0% interest because you're buying a gift card. And honestly, it's like a 50-50 whether or not you're ever going to use it. So it's free money for the businesses.
But we
Just
tell
say, hey, it's
ourselves,
gift
well,
cards.
it's free money. I might as well do it for the free money. And I just think that mentality causes more people to go broke than it causes them to ever build any wealth. You know, and I get it. Like, no one's claiming they're building wealth with credit card points. But at the same time, they see it as like a piece of being smart financially. And I just disagree fundamentally that I think Graham would be just as well off if he stuck to a debit card, if not better off.
So
That's
I
the
will
hot
say
take.
my perspective changed a little bit after chapter 3.
Hey, that's a win.
The only reason why it changed a little bit is because I actually saw how bad the data was on it, which was like the main thing for me was 49% or whatever number it is can't pay off their monthly credit card statement. Now, for me, that's really, really, really sad, because they're getting charged exorbitant interest rates. It's just going to keep them under, right? And it brings me back to this conversation that we had with Grant Cardone, actually. And I was saying it's better to encourage people to get high-paying salaried positions. And he was saying, no, spend your last few $1,000s on education to start your own business. But most businesses fail in the first 5 years. 50% of businesses fail. So you're like setting them up to fail eventually.
And he said, well,
down
if they
the
had
line.
bought my course,
Well, no,
maybe they would have
Sure, you
succeeded.
could make that argument, but his whole thing is like, if you're just persistent and you keep trying. I'm like, sure, if you play it super smart, but if you look at all available data, people do not win when they're trying that.
Not
Generally
everyone should
speaking.
start a business.
Now, here's the thing. If you're super smart about it, yes, I believe the percent would change. I'm sure 90% could succeed in business if they continue pushing year after year, get persistent, and continue working on it. The same with credit cards. If you're super smart and super disciplined with your spending, and you don't spend more because of it, and you never allow them to charge you interest because of it, then I think that you can get ahead. But if you look at all available data, I would never encourage every single person listening right now to start your own business, because I know most fail. I would not encourage everyone listening to this to start day trading, because I know most day traders lose money. So now if I'm looking at data around credit cards, it's like, well, most people lose, right? If you're smart, you'll win. And I do think it's good to win, right? I do think it's good to get the cash back on credit cards. I think it's good to get the sign-up bonuses. I think it's really nice to go into the lounges when I'm flying. But I think it's important about being intentional about the decisions that you're making, rather than being, super, I would say, motivated to get a credit card because, we're pleased to accept you into the card, or buy a sign-up bonus and you're not actually spending the points and stuff like that. I think it's important to be intentional about it.
But before we go into that, you might have noticed that we're now filming in 4K. We're really proud of that. We've come a long way, because if you go to our channel and you sort by oldest, you'll be able to see our first video, and it was pretty bad. But it got us started, and we were able to grow to almost 900,000 subscribers without anything fancy, and our sponsor, StreamYard, is there to help you out.
Creating good content does not need to cost an arm and a leg, and with today's sponsor, StreamYard, you can create high-quality content right from your browser with just the click of a button.
All you need is a camera and an internet connection, and you'll be able to stream throughout multiple platforms at the exact same time, from YouTube to Instagram to Facebook to LinkedIn and more.
Getting on every single platform is something we've been personally working on in the Iced Coffee Hour. For example, you may have seen us on TikTok or Instagram, which has been doing incredibly well for us, and StreamYard is there to make it extremely simple and also free, with a free package with the link down below in the description.
Again, it's completely free, and all you need to do is click the link down below in the description to start creating high-quality content today. And StreamYard has been a fantastic tool for us. We've used them for years now. Highly recommend them. The link is down below in the description to get started today for free. And now with that said, let's get back to the episode.
I just know human nature is, I talked to a girl today, man on the street in Las Vegas. And I was asking her about her credit cards. Like, hey, how many do you have? What do you use? And she's like, I have this one. Then I have the Apple one. I was like, what made you get the Apple one? She's like, well, it's titanium. And I saw my dad with it.
No,
and I'm like,
really?
That's humanity. Like, whether we want to admit it or not, that's humanity. And I talk about in the book the actual history of credit cards. And it's funny. It started with Frank McNamara in a diner in New York. And he forgot his wallet. He was so embarrassed that he asked, hey, we need a credit system. So where if I forget my wallet, I can still pay. The first credit card was born, the Diners Club.
Yep.
And the first one was actually made of cardboard. Not quite the flex of the titanium cards, but the fact that we're lured in by She literally said, well, the card's just pretty. Like, that's an insane reason to get a credit card. But it's one of the reasons and one of the main reasons people do it. There's a reason we love the Amex. It's shiny and thick. And the thicker it is, the more well off you are. It's a game they've created.
I just like the idea of being morally consistent. And if I wouldn't encourage everybody to be a day trader, I don't know if I would say to everybody that you should get a credit card when you look at the data.
Here's the thing, though, with your example of like business or day trading. I think it's a terrible thing to do that out of desperation for money. If someone says, hey, I'm broke, I need to make $1,000, you would never say start a business because, like you said, so many people would fail. Or a sign-up bonus. But I think it's like, hey, I got this idea and I want to be an entrepreneur. And if it fails or succeeds, I just want to try it. Then I think it's fantastic. I think the experience that you get from running a business or even day trading could be really invaluable. Even if you lose, the experience that you get from that, I think, is invaluable.
I agree, and I do think there's some selection bias if you look at the people watching your videos of like the 5 best credit cards to get in 2023. I think if you look at the results of that, more people are probably winning than losing. Oh,
gosh.
Imagine
imagine those videos of like, you should get this card because it's titanium.
Exactly,
look
because
how cool
you're
it is.
actually outlining like how you can be smart with it. And it's not just like, oh, get this card because...
Well, and no one's reading the fine print. If you ask people what the interest rate is on their credit card, they'd have no idea, most of them. Unless they have a balance and they're having to pay that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they all get starry-eyed at the bonuses and not looking at, here's what could happen. You may get 2%. You may as well get 22% in interest.
Another hard thing, though, is there any significance to paying that interest for a few months to get a slap on the wrist and learn your lesson? That you need to be more intentional about your spending,
or
do you
slap.
protect
But isn't that silly to be like, I think we should touch the hot stove to figure out that stoves shouldn't be touched?
Some
I think
people
it's
need
silly,
to touch
yeah,
that
but I
hot
think some
stove,
people
though.
need to. I think people need a reality
people
check
sometimes need a rock bottom to have that I've had it moment, and that's what
Such
we see
as
on the
you,
Ramsey show.
right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone at some point that has followed the Ramsey plan has some level of that didn't feel good. I don't want to live like that anymore. You have to get to that point. So I think Americans are just too comfortable sitting on our own poopy diapers at this point. But the people who are ready to make a change, they've had life happen, and they have that emergency, and they didn't have the emergency fund to cover it, and it was scary. COVID did that for a lot of people. I mean, it spooked everyone. Like, crap, we got to get our act together. We've been just like spending, nothing in savings, nothing in retirement. Like, we don't know what life's going to throw at us, so we better be prepared.
What was the most surprising thing from going to people on the street and talking to them?
Oh, man. I mean, Vegas has, there's a lot of interesting people on the Vegas Strip that you talk to. But the most shocking thing was just, I was asking people like, did you budget for this trip? How much do you plan on spending? How are you paying for this? And the amount of people who just did not have answers. It was just like, I'm just going to swipe and I'll worry about it later. Like that lack of, there's no planning. There's no delayed gratification. It's all instant gratification, YOLO. That's a problem for future me. And the problem is future you is going to wake up going, crap, like you got a financial hangover from how you spent in December. And so that's the problem I'm saying is no one's making a budget going, all right, we're going to plan $1,000. We're going to pay cash for it. Instead, they're like, well, I'll get the cash back and I'll make the payments.
What percentage of people said that, though? That they just swiped the card and didn't think about it?
I would say 6 out of 10 people had that mentality. And we know 6 out of 10 people live paycheck to paycheck. So I think there's a strong correlation there.
Yeah.
I think the problem with a lot of these things, such as like being financially disciplined, losing weight and stuff like that, is that there's never a stark punishment until it finally rains, then it pours. Like you're not going to be suffering from swiping your credit card for maybe a couple of years. And then all of a sudden everything adds up. Like I gave an example of in your own personal life in your book where it just got so much and then it infected every other area of your life.
Yeah, no one opens a credit card thinking, I'm probably going to carry a balance. Everyone thinks, I'm going to be the guy who pays it off early, on time, and I'll never carry a balance.
Part of it is that the minimum payment isn't even that painful. So if you just can pay $100 a month but carry a $5,000 balance, it's not that bad. It's not even a slap on the wrist. It's just slightly
you also
uncomfortable.
never pay it off.
Or you just never pay it off. But I mean, what are the it's numbers on a screen to a lot of people. So they'll just see the 5,000. It doesn't matter.
Well,
I
they
just
don't know
make
the math
$100
of
a
what
month.
22% APR is, which is
Right.
the average credit card interest now. It's at an all-time high. Credit card debt's at an all-time high of $1 trillion. And we're all wondering why we're broke. Fighting, and we're trying to fight
But
inflation.
are people broke? That's what I want to know. It's
They're
like,
not. Well, their consumer spending is way up. So if they are broke, they don't seem to care very much.
I see
Why-
such conflicting studies.
I know,
Some
it doesn't
have
seem
more
like
money than they ever had. There's $6 trillion right now sitting in money market funds and in cash and treasuries, more than ever. But it also seems like Anecdotally, you hear stories of people who are doing worse than ever. But statistically, it seems like people are better off today overall than they were in 2019.
Well, I mean, America is an amazing country. So even a bad day for us is a great day for any other country. So we're just so spoiled. And there's a lot of entitlement here. And people have great incomes. You know, people like to complain, but most people have great incomes. It's not an income problem. It's an expense problem. You know, we see this. People making six figures are still living paycheck to paycheck, the data shows. So that tells me it's not that you just make more money and your problems are solved. You just have lifestyle creep happen. And, you know, you make $100,000, you're going to spend $120,000. And that compounds over time, causing a lot of people to feel broke regardless of their income.
So what do you think of the long-term consequences of this? If people aren't saving up for retirement, maybe it's like this younger generation that wants that instant gratification.
Well, they don't want to wait 30 years to tap into a 401k piggy bank.
What do you think is going to happen in the future then to these people? Because this seems like it's a huge population of people that are doing this.
Yeah, well, I think the younger generations, in a lot of ways, are way smarter than our parents' generation. Like the fact that they have access to all this information is amazing. The problem is there's so many more traps out there. And I've always said, if you follow the trends, you're going to follow the traps. Our parents didn't have options. It was you put money into your retirement account and that's it. Nowadays, it's like, do I do single stocks? Do I get into crypto? Do I do real estate? The options are so overwhelming that there's this, you know, paralysis by analysis, and people either don't do anything or they do a bunch of things but don't really make progress in any of it. And so that's what I'm worried about with the next generations, is that they're not focused. And there's no consistency over time. And you guys know, like, building wealth is consistently your dollar cost averaging into the S&P 500 over time. It's the boring move, but it's the one that consistently will cause you to build wealth.
See, I just think it's so much easier for people who pay attention to get ahead, just because so many people are not and just give in to whatever they desire in the moment. Like, I think it's easier than ever. If you put your head down and you want to stay disciplined, you're going to get ahead very easily.
Oh, and that's the thesis of the book is like, the people say the little man can't get ahead. It's harder than ever in America today. Inflation, the housing market, and the guy in the White House. And what I've found is you can get ahead in America today if you just follow a really simple, boring, unsexy, controversial upstream path of getting out of debt, staying out of debt, have an emergency fund, invest 15% into proven things like the stock market over a long period of time, pay off your dang house and don't hang on to it in retirement with a second mortgage and a HELOC on it, and you're going to be okay. And that's regardless of income. Whether you make $40,000 or $400,000, if you follow those principles, you will be okay. But most people want to make it more complicated. They think they're smarter than that. There's pride, there's fear, there's greed, and it causes us to make really unwise decisions. And then people call into the show at 60 going, I'm screwed, what do I do? And it's just harder at 60 to undo some of those decisions.
So that, in the simplest terms, would be your advice to make any viewer watching right now a millionaire.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I know a lot of people out there are saying, well, leveraging debt is a part of building wealth. And while some people have done that, the majority of people will go broke faster. And so to me, getting out of debt and using your powerful wealth building tool, your income, is your best path to wealth.
So what's the difference between people who leverage debt successfully and make money versus those who do not and lose money?
Well, there's different types, you know, like leveraging real estate debt, for example, versus trying to leverage something else like margin or options calls in the stock market. Like that stuff is insane risk. Jack.
Don't do it.
And Jack will tell you all about losing lots of money.
Yeah, I got margin.
So there's different types of debt leverage out there.
Yeah.
But a lot of the difference is luck and timing, if you're going to be honest, of like people who have done it well or successfully, or even looking at crypto. You know, it's like people didn't know what crypto was going to do or is going to do. So the ones that have become millionaires, it wasn't because they were so brilliant.
I think it's a really small population of people, though. I think it's education that's the main differentiating factor between those who leverage debt properly and those who do it poorly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of education. There's strategy involved. I've just found for the average person, there's a 100% success rate if you get out of debt and do it my way versus a 7% success rate leveraging debt this way. And so to me, I'm all about what is your surest best path. It may be slower, but you'll get there.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And then the thing that I mostly have a problem with the anti-debt philosophy,
Give me the
is
beef.
The home loan. Why is it such a big deal to have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 2.5%? That's what I have right now. Now, you would probably argue, if I had the cash, to pay it off.
We know you won't. You have the cash.
I
You
know.
could do it today.
And I'm making money on inflation. Like this money I'm able to invest in other things.
You could
and
put
I
it
can
in a
always sell
30-year
it.
treasury.
I could put it in a treasury and get more money
You
than
could.
how much I'm losing on interest.
My philosophy
And the
around
write-off,
that
Jack.
is in the write-off.
Thank you, Grant.
The write-off.
That's my favorite. The write-off. Sending $2,500 to the IRS is somehow better than sending $10,000 to a lender. That's the write-off right there.
Well, it
There's
takes
your
the
interest
2.8.
deduction.
It takes the 2.8 down to a 2.3. Effective. That's what the write-off does.
That hurts my brain.
2.3. Inflation is way higher. Treasuries, you lock in a 30-year right
Well,
now.
we're
like
also looking at a
4.5%.
very specific window of time.
Yes.
And so things are looking great for Jack on paper right now. But to me, we just don't know what the future holds. And I would rather reduce the risk, have more peace, have that money back in my life. Obviously, you don't have a huge mortgage payment, to begin with. You got a bunch of roommates, so you're doing okay. But for the average American out there, hanging on to the mortgage is not benefiting them in any significant way.
I think it would. I think it would reduce the risk not to pay off the mortgage. Because all of a sudden, you're going to do some math here.
Because you're saying the money's locked up.
Money's
in the
locked
mortgage.
up. Let's say the house is $400,000 and you have a
Okay.
$300,000 mortgage.
So
I think having $300,000
Talk about my
liquid,
situation. My house is paid off. The money's stuck in the house. I can't access it. I'm not going to do a cash out refi. I'm not going to do any of that.
No.
Why am I screwed? At what risk do I have?
In your position, I don't think you would be screwed. I think in a lot of people's positions where they don't have a paid off house and the choice is, do I sell my stocks and everything I have over here, my investments to pay in the house? Let's say they pay off the house. All of a sudden they lose their job. And let's just say they have children and healthcare expenses and things like this, and they need money. And all of a sudden they're negative every month. In that situation, yeah, of course they can get another job or something like that. But I would value the liquidity of having money on the sidelines much more than having it tied up in a property.
Well, we call that emergency fund, and that's part of it. We tell people have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund before you become a homeowner. And so let's say things went downhill, I would have my emergency fund there ready to protect me. And the idea of me being out of work for 6 months, I'd swallow my pride and go do whatever gig I needed to do until I got back on my feet. And for most people, there's very little interruption of income. Some people don't have to touch the emergency fund at all. But if they do, it's there to cover them during that period of time. So to me, I'm like, I don't need the wiggle room because I have my emergency fund.
Part of it, too, is 30 years from now, let's say even say 20 years from now, the money that you're paying off is going to be so devalued with inflation. We could see the way the dollar is going. It's going down. If we see a small amount of deflation at some point, so be it. But I think long term, they're going to keep printing
But
money.
you also
And so the value
you
of
believe in the
dollar-
housing market, and it's
I do.
going to continue to appreciate.
Correct.
So my house is appreciated way more than my investment accounts.
Yes,
You know
but
what I mean?
but had you leveraged your money and let's say bought 2 properties, you would have doubled that appreciation.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But there's risk and headache involved, and it
I
could
would
have
say
gone south.
over 30 years, I bet on the housing market. Over 10, I have no clue. But over 30, 50 years, I think it's a solid investment, personally.
Yeah, real estate's
Yeah.
great, and I think if you did it with cash, there's less risk on paper
Less upside.
and in real life, But and you get more cash flow with a cash flow property. You talked to Dave Ramsey about this, and he audited your portfolio. He's like, the only thing I do different is pay it all off. You got the money, but you like your cash position.
California is a good example of those mortgages. They're at 3.5%, 3.3, give or take, but I'm paying 50% taxes to California when everything's said and done with state income tax and everything like that. So I that 3.5% is really just take that down by half. It's so cheap.
Wait,
With
you know what
inflation,
else
it's
I've
just
seen
like,
with these low interest rates that's actually becoming a curse is people have handcuffs now.
Oh, yeah.
They don't want to let go. They won't sell it because I can't get another loan for 3.5%.
The other thing
so they're
that-
stuck.
The other thing no one's talking about is a tax basis on these properties that have gone up in value, that have doubled in value in like 5 years. Now, all of a sudden, it's not just your mortgage rate that goes up, it's your tax basis. If you were to sell and buy anything else, all of a sudden your property taxes are also going to be going up significantly. So that's one of the reasons that, like, if I could snap my fingers and keep my tax basis in California, transfer that somewhere else, I would love to do it. I'd just dump everything I have just to get out of the state.
But don't you think
the
if you had
tax base is
everything
so
paid
low.
off, you'd be less worried about letting go of a low interest mortgage? If you're going to just pay cash for the next property, you'd have more options, truthfully, versus feeling stuck. Like, I can't let go of that. Those are the calls
just
we
because
get.
it's so attractive. That's the only reason why. It's so attractive to me to have a 3% interest rate for 30 years, especially in a high income tax state. Like, that to me is so good that it's like, why do I want to give up such a good thing? So it's not like I feel handcuffed. I only feel handcuffed because it's like, this is so good that I can't give it up.
Exactly.
Anything
And to me,
else
that is
so
a form of handcuffs. You know what I mean?
golden handcuffs. We'll call them that.
Sure.
Golden handcuffs. It limits mobility, but it's so good that, the good outweighs kind of being stuck and holding these properties
Sure.
with
That's
a low
fair.
tax basis.
What do you
They're
think,
very
Jack?
first world problems.
The way that I see it is in my personal experience, in Graham's personal experience, in another viewer, let's say, if they're very intentional about the way that they're spending and taking on debt and stuff like that, then I think it's a win. I think that you're just winning at the end of the day. If you look at your financial statements, taking on debt and being smart with it, maybe using credit cards and stuff like that, and you're extremely intentional and smart about it, year after year, you will win more than the other person that isn't, barring spending more because it's a credit card rather than cash out of your account, barring that.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. But I also think the only other thing that could sway me is this piece that everyone says that you get when you pay off debt. And I want to know, like,
I just talked about this with Andre. Andre Jick was talking about, he was like, could you create a mathematical formula for the
Right.
peace of mind,
Yes.
emotional? And I was like, I wish.
That's
But
the
I
only
don't-
thing
I
I've
don't-
been curious about.
Because that's
don't
what
know what
Graham
it would
needs.
feel
Graham
like.
needs an equation where he could be like, all right, the peace of mind is X over Z multiplied by...
You know what's
There's
funny?
no way to do it.
I remember this conversation I had with you a few years back, Graham. So Graham and I, when we were in Los Angeles together, we would go on this walk almost every single
I
day.
miss those walks.
So romantic.
miss those
I know, it
walks.
was so cute.
Dude, we came up with the best ideas. 1 hour during the weekdays, we take like a 2 mile.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Why'd you
It's
stop?
So good.
We
moved here.
lived together, so that's when we did it. And here's an interesting thing. When you're actually walking forward, your brain works more efficiently.
I believe that.
So there's like some studies that can
yeah.
prove that. I don't know what they're called, but yeah. Anyways.
Walking backwards, inefficient, not good.
Exactly. No, but we would do this walk every single day. And one day, Graham, out of nowhere, never heard him say anything like this ever before. He was like, I'm really tempted to pay off every property I have.
I said that?
You said that.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I
it's-
honestly don't
it's
remember.
Were you
saying
on
struck me.
Dayquil or something?
Could've.
Struck
I
me
don't
that
know,
you
man.
said that. And I was like, what are you talking about? You're like, just the peace of mind. And you were like thinking about it because I think obviously you had a lot less money back then. So you were thinking to yourself, like, now you're more affluent. So you think, okay, it's okay if I take on more debt. It's still a smaller percentage of the amount of money I have. But back in the day, I think it was a more significant portion. And so you were
Yeah.
considering just paying off everything and living more affluently, which I
Yes.
found really interesting. And I was wondering,
Yeah.
like, if you could measure out that piece back then, would it have convinced you?
In hindsight, I'm glad I didn't. I think I remember what was going through my mind at the time was that COVID was kind of uncertain. The markets were a bit uncertain. And I had this cash and I was thinking, what would be the benefit? Because I just moved into a new home and this was like my expenses tripled by going from a duplex into like an actual house. And so I was I was stressed out from going from like living on $1,800 a month to like, I think at the time it was like 10. Like it was a huge bump up. And so that stressed me out for a while. In hindsight, I'm glad I didn't do that.
But I want to know, like, because even he was tempted, and this is like, Mr. Pro Debt over here, the anti-Ramsey. But if we could somehow figure out this piece that people experience when they pay off their debt in another form other than like screaming, right? Like the anti-debt scream. Because I think that's hard to measure.
If I'm sure someone much smarter than me can find some equation that may convince Graham.
Okay, so in your own personal life, when you paid it off.
Well, I think also like having a family and getting married and having a baby, it just changes the level of risk. If I was a young man making what Graham makes, I would probably have a similar risk tolerance. But at this stage of life, as I get older, as I find what my priorities are in life and what my goals are, things have just shifted. Like the goalpost has just moved. And to me, less risk is going to create a more peaceful family environment. Like I'm not going to fight with my wife when we don't have payments. You know what I mean? Like we just had a baby 4 months ago, and if she wants to stay home, it's not like oh gosh, we got to pay the bills, and if we lose your income, it's just like, cool, you do what you want, babe. Like whatever your heart leads you to do, and it just changes the way you have. It changes the way you make decisions. It gives you more options, more margin, more peace, more joy, and that's the whole thesis of this book. Is if we break free from the system, we get out of debt, we build wealth the right way, we can have what we're really after, which I think is those things. It's not just more money. We want what the things money can't buy, which I think is the emotional piece.
I'm just so curious what that would be for me. And the unfortunate part is it would cost a lot of money at this point with all the mortgages to pay them all off.
What would it take? Give me a number.
What, to pay off the mortgages?
Yeah. $1 million bucks? $2 million bucks?
3.9. And that's
3.9
this house
million
and all the
cash.
mortgages in California.
It would,
everything.
it would cause you to be
3.9.
completely debt free. Have you done the math on what your new cash flow
Yeah, it
an
doesn't
income
make
would be?
sense because even if that money's in treasuries making 5.5% to pay off I'd like my cash flow would go down. Like
But that's
I'm
a
making
recent
more
thing
money,
in history that we've seen these kinds of numbers.
or I could lock it in. I mean, I could lock in for the next 30 years hypothetically if I wanted to, and still get 4 something, which is still higher than the mortgages. So I feel like it would be a downgrade financially in terms of cash flow, and then I'm
But
paying
you
a
have
higher
new cash flow to invest, wouldn't you?
Yes, but I would be paying higher taxes from the California portion because it would have less
It
write-offs
sounds like a
against it.
California problem. I think it's time.
That's a California problem. It would be a lot of money to have that feeling, and I'm not sure if I would feel any better because of it.
Well, I think truthfully, in both of your situations, the key to your success and your wealth is the income. It's your savings rate. It's your ability to have a giant chunk of money that you can deploy into investments in real estate. And so it's not necessarily that debt was the ticket. It's you guys found ways to increase your income to such a point where you can worry about
Here's an example. Right now, I could take, let's just say, $4 million. I could take $4 million, put it in commercial real estate here in Las Vegas, and get anywhere between 7 to 8%. I would be able to depreciate that property against the income, and for the most part, almost all of it would be tax free. So I could make 8%. Let's even say conservatively 6.5%. That would be more than enough to cover all the debt servicing. Every year I make that, I'll pay the debt 2 years. So, from
Why
a
don't
financial
you?
standpoint, I'm looking. I don't see any good deals.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's tough.
I've been looking. I'm in the camp that I think commercial real estate's got to take a hit, and I could be totally wrong, but I've noticed prices go down so far. So in the last year, they've gone down about 10 to 15% in Vegas, and I just don't think they've
I
hit
feel like as a
point.
cash buyer at this juncture, though, you could find some deals.
Everything I like has multiple offers, believe it or not.
Dang.
And they're going over asking.
Hot market.
Yeah.
Come to Nashville. I mean, it's also very hot.
Yeah. Well, the issue, and I know we're getting nuanced here, but a lot of buyers are coming from California and they're parking their money in Vegas. And anything in Vegas that they
Oh.
get, even if it's at a 5.5% return, a 5 cap, they're doing it because, hey, it's better than having our money in California, and we have to 1031 it. So let's just take what we could get. So anything that's decent, California buyers or New York buyers, they're just taking their money, they're putting it here.
Or move to Tennessee, no state income tax. Solve some problems.
Yeah, but capital gains taxes there.
That's not going to kill you.
If
You're
I
not
sell,
selling property.
If I sell, you never know.
But you wouldn't because you have that sweet low interest loan.
Not any, well, yeah, here, but anything else you buy, you're not going to get that.
Not unless you pay cash. Boom.
What I find interesting is you said we acquire money to get all of the things that money can't buy, which I've never heard it phrased that way. And I do think that kind of makes sense when you say that your wife, she had the kid, you guys had the kid, and she didn't have to,
To be
go
fair,
back to
she
work.
did. I did
She
not.
had the
I
child.
did
You
not
contributed
do much work.
in your own way, in the George
Sure.
way. You contributed.
Sure.
Right. So
Changing diapers.
Right, exactly. So, she doesn't have to go back to work. She's able to stay at home, stay with the kid and everything because you have this debt-free lifestyle, which I've never heard it said in that way. And that is a very compelling way. It's like, what are we working so hard to get all of this money for? Life is short. Life ends, and once you have enough, granted, whatever that enough amount is, then sure, maybe you can accelerate the amount of time that it takes to get to the point where you're getting the stuff money can't buy.
I mean, yeah, when you look at really successful, wealthy people, they'll tell you time freedom is everything. And now money can buy conveniences like the personal chef or the personal trainer or whatever those things are that allow you to have the life you want. And I've rarely seen debt allow people to have that life any more freely. And the people that I look up to and my mentors, they have more time and money than ever, and it's largely because they live a debt-free lifestyle. And these aren't billionaire business owners. These are people who are from all over the country visiting us, and they're saying, hey, I was able to cash flow all 5 kids' college thanks to following your principles, living debt-free, paid-for house. We're baby steps millionaires now, and this was on a teacher's salary. That inspires me because it's not about the Grant Cardone. If you don't make $400,000, you suck. You know what I mean? Some people just want to be teachers. We need teachers in America, and they may never make 6 figures, and I still want them to build wealth. And so a part of it is just, it's comforting to me that anyone can build wealth regardless of their income. Obviously, more income helps, but if you just follow these principles, you will get there, and you will have the things on the other side, like we talked about. And so that's why I talk about money so we can stop talking about money. Because too many of us are talking about it in a negative way. We're stressed out. What's going to happen? What could be? What could I have done with this money? And I want people to have JOMO instead of FOMO, the joy of missing out. Of saying, I can just run my race, take care of my family, take care of my business, go on the vacation I want to take, and not have to worry about any of this stuff.
So, how has paying off your debt had any other tangential benefits in your life? You explained the thing about your wife being able to stay home with the kid.
Oh, yeah.
Any other things, like some sort of inner peace that didn't exist beforehand or other ways?
I mean, it's hard to say because I'm not the amount of time that I'm saving. I know it sounds weird by not playing the game of the system, by not worrying about the credit score and the auto loan. Like we just paid cash to get my wife an SUV, and I didn't have to haggle over financing. I just went, here's the price. There you go. And the finance office is calling me being like, I don't understand why you're paying cash. You should be leasing. That's what I do with all my vehicles. I lease all my vehicles. I'm like, lady, you don't understand. Like, you got the wrong guy.
Listen, lady.
I
Do
didn't
you
have,
know who
I didn't
I
have the
am?
emotional energy to even fight this lady in the finance office. I was like, lady, I'm writing a check. I'm going to be done with it. And to me, like, the time saving and the mental energy and brain calories I'm not burning over playing the game of a toxic money culture is so worth it. And so it just feels nice. I'm never worrying about, there's no bills coming to our house. Like, the utility bills get paid, and that's it.
What's your overhead every month?
Utilities and insurance and property taxes. I'm guessing that comes out to $1,000.
And then what about food, healthcare?
Food,
I guess
yeah.
healthcare, Ramsey would.
Healthcare comes out of my paycheck, and now
Okay.
it's more thanks to a baby. And so that's, a few $100 a month max for a
not
premium.
bad. Yeah.
$250 maybe.
Okay.
Um,
What about food?
Food, I mean, now that we don't have any payments, we do eat out more, or we'll get more, frozen meals and less cooking at home, less toiling over the rice and beans. And so we have a food budget of probably, on average, $700, $800. And, we'll go out to eat, have some nice date nights and some good meals at home, but we don't really we don't have to worry about grocery shopping. It's
So
like, we'll get what we need and
It
we'll
sounds
be fine.
to me with like car insurance and gas and other maintenance, $3,000, maybe $3,500 a month.
Yeah, our hard expenses, you're looking at three grand a month to cover everything we need. And so anything above that is money that I can invest into my girls' college fund, a brokerage account, giving generously, saving up for the vacation, saving up to upgrade my car. Graham, you'll be so upset. My
What
Tesla
happened?
window fell into my door and will not come back up.
There's no way that happened.
I rolled the
what
window down
that
and
happened on
didn't
Macy's
come back
car.
up.
It's the motor.
It's the motor. It's like the
Yeah.
power window regulator's
Yeah,
out.
it's about $600.
So,
Now
yeah.
it may be more because it's Tesla.
Sure.
And they upcharge, but $300 the cheapest, $800 the most expensive. I dealt with that.
Just
with
real
Macy's car.
quickly, explain how you got this Tesla because it's so funny.
What, like how I just paid for it?
I've not
You
heard
tell
of
the
many
story,
people.
Jack.
I'm curious.
Didn't you buy the most amount of mileage Tesla? That you,
Oh, yes. So I was looking. This is funny. So
'Cause
once
you wanted the luxury.
we paid off the house, and so I dangled the carrot of I'm not going to upgrade my '09 Honda Civic with the bumper hanging off until I pay off the house. That was my goal. And so we paid off the house, and I went, all right, I'm going to buy a Honda. My dream car was a hybrid Honda Accord. My wife laughed at me, but I was like, I'm a man of utility. That's a sweet ride. You get like an EXL, primo. I could not find
She
one.
was nervous because the ladies love that car.
The ladies
They see
can't
you,
get
they
it.
see
They're
you
like,
driving
it's
around in
over.
that. Yeah. So I could see why she did not want you to get in that
Ladies
car.
love an Accord. So I was looking for like a 2018. This is in like 2021. I'm
Yeah.
looking for like a 2018 Accord hybrid under 30 grand. I could not find one across the country. Then I stumble upon a 2013 Model S Tesla, 4 owners, 2 minor accidents, 165,000 miles, and I was like, I'm getting a Tesla. And so I ended up checking it out. I was the first one to, inquire. There was 25 people that were waiting.
You're kidding.
The guy was like,
you
I need to know
serious?
if you're serious because this car is going to move. I was like, I've never even driven an electric car. I don't know. So I nervously took it for a test drive, and I knew the guy, so I trusted him. And I was like, I'll take it. And that car was $23,900. And I took the gamble
Wow.
on a high mileage Tesla. So now I'm sitting at 188,000
And
miles.
how has it been since then?
It's been great. It still
No
has
issues?
the door handle got stuck out. I got that fixed.
Okay.
And this window situation.
Sure.
I upgraded the screen to the newer, model
Yeah.
system. But other than that, it's been a great vehicle. I mean, this is not an ad for Tesla, but I respect the heck out of them for going 500,000 miles on these batteries.
Yeah.
And it's only degraded about 20%, so I still get 165 miles range.
Mine had no issues except right when I got it, the AC broke, and it was fixed under warranty within a week. And at the time, now this is 2019.
This is your Model 3?
This is Model 3.
Okay.
They gave me a P90D Model X for a week as a loaner car. I don't know if that still exists.
I don't think they do that. I think you
They
got
usually
some,
don't give you the
there's
fancy
some
ones.
privilege there. They knew you.
Back
know
in the
that-
day, they'd give you the fancy ones.
Yeah, so
not
maybe it's
now.
just back in the day.
Okay.
Got in with the Model 3 before they were cool.
Yeah.
Like just as
That's
they were
fair.
I
starting
think
to
you
like
made
come
them
up
cool.
there.
Any
I
issues
think
with
so,
with
yeah.
yours, Jack?
No
Good.
issues so far. No, the only thing is the build quality is not fantastic. Like obviously everyone knows this.
Compared
You-
to like a traditional
yeah,
luxury
you
car.
could buy a Prius or something and it's gonna look. By the way, the new Priuses. Oh my god,
I
they're
love them.
gorgeous.
I
okay?
love
Yeah,
them.
they just were. They're like, oh, you think Priuses are ugly? Ha! And then they make the 2024 Prius and it looks
I
gorgeous.
wouldn't mind getting a Prius just because of the range. The one thing I don't like about the Model 3 is if you're driving a long
I
distance.
think it's time for you to
charge
get the long range, get that Model S, 400 miles.
yeah.
That's something.
Yeah, I think it's 405 miles.
Worth it.
But it's expensive. That's 60 grand. I could buy 2 Priuses for that price.
I know.
Or you could
yeah,
sell,
but are any
the,
actually
sell the
selling
old
at MSRP?
GT.
No.
Okay.
Get 10
Dang
Priuses.
it. I was so
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
Get 10 Priuses.
I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Let me
Deploy
do
them
that.
on
Yeah.
Turo. You'll make $4 million
That's a good
a
point.
year.
Yeah, well, if I put that money down and I finance the Priuses and I get 100 Priuses, imagine that on Toro. And then I could start an Airbnb
We took this call,
business.
Graham, the other day, and this couple, they financed 3 cars to use on Turo. They're underwater on all 3 by 15 or $20 grand. It was heartbreaking.
What do you
They're
tell
so
that
screwed.
person?
I mean, they're screwed. There's
do
no
they
way
do?
out of this. You have to come up with the money for the difference to then pay them off. And they're clearly not making enough from Turo to then cover these payments now that they're underwater on. So you got to just keep them and pay them off, cover the difference, or get a loan for the difference from a credit union,
Yeah.
which is going to be hard to do at this point. So it's real. I mean, there's sad situations where people think they get real starry-eyed. And car loans, I have a whole chapter on car loans in the book and how they are America's wealth killer today. I truly believe that. As expensive as they are, how high the interest rates are, and how willing we are to just go into debt for a car.
Yeah. The car loans are something that is largely unregulated. And I did a whole deep dive in an old video of mine
Ooh.
about the auto loan industry, and they're not regulated. And it's one of the few things that, like, when you get a student loan, there are certain bodies of the government that can
Like, hey,
regulate
don't screw
those.
people over.
Yeah, pretty much. And make sure they're fair and make sure that you qualify for it. Like, it's so stringent to get a mortgage, very stringent to get student loans.
But car loans were just
car
like,
loans.
sure.
Exactly.
And
They-
leases are even worse.
Yeah.
Because they don't have to disclose the interest rate that's
Yeah.
baked into your payment.
Oh, absolutely. The
even
other thing
worse.
is that with auto loans, I think it was something like 30% of people lie on their application but get approved anyway. So they'll overstate their income or underestimate their expenses to be able to get the loan. And the lenders purposely will overlook it. They're not going to check anything because they just
Which what does
they
that
just
tell you
wanna
about
get
these
the loan.
lenders? They're not
here's the thing.
exactly people of integrity.
But they get paid. The dealership and the person originating the loan get paid as long as you make your first like 2 payments.
Yeah, they'll tell you, hey, don't pay this off early because you'll screw me over on the bonus. I'm like,
Exactly. So as
a
long as they
sad
just make
way
the
to
2
live.
payments, they could bundle them together, sell them to hungry investors who want a high yield, and they don't care.
Well, I
So
compare
autos are dangerous.
dealerships to Gus Fring in Breaking Bad, Los Pollos Hermanos. So it's a front for his drug operation. Like, that's what dealerships are.
Yeah,
The vehicles are just the vehicle. They're actually making money with lending.
absolutely.
And so it's a really wild. That's why they'll be like, oh, you're gonna pay cash? No. We're gonna charge you more. $1,000 incentive was only if you're financing.
Yeah.
And it's because they're making that and more.
Auto loans, I 100% agree with you. So financing any sort of depreciating asset like that at the interest rates that you're getting on car loans, and they're just extending them out.
Well, and now
You're
what
getting
we're
8-year
seeing
loans.
on the Ramsey show, everyone is underwater on their cars.
Oh, of
They're
course.
calling in. They're like, I'm 20 grand underwater. And I'm like, how did we get here?
You
They're
know why?
rolling
Because
over negative equity. They're doing all kinds of things.
People thought that car loans would people just thought that car values would keep going up. They saw 2020, 2021, 2022. It's like, oh my gosh, my used car is worth $10,000 more. Wow.
Yep.
I could make money on cars now, and I'm gonna buy a Chevy Volt, and it's gonna be worth more. And they're gonna buy it at the peak of the market and pay over MSRP for that, just to find out. Wait a second, that's not reality. I think same thing with watches too. Everyone is like, oh, wow, all these watches, certain Pateks, APs, the hype watches are down like 30% from the peak. Some are down 50%. When did you buy the townhome?
2019.
How much has that gone up in value, like percentage wise?
Oh, it went up. We bought it at 300. We sold at 529 3 years later.
The GT's not gone up that much, but it's up about
I beat
30%.
it.
But it's up about 30%.
I'm glad that my personal home beat a luxury toy that you purchased. That's
it's up
comforting.
30%.
It's pretty good for now.
No, I think it'll stay.
Well, once they find out it's grams. Can I say, I was talking to Andre, and he gave me the down low that you had attempted a foot modeling career.
I did?
It didn't pan out.
Oh, people trying to buy feet pics?
Yeah.
From me?
Yeah, he said no one would buy your feet pics.
I think you're confusing it with bathwater.
Oh.
I'm recanting what
I'm sure
Andre
he
told
would
me.
sell feet pics for the right price. Okay, first
No,
of all,
I
let's just
think he's
establish-
confusing
You tried
with
to sell
bathwater.
bathwater?
I
Second
did,
of all-
10,000.
And you know, I think this is the funniest part.
Yeah.
Like people sell bathwater and it's like a cup or a pint. He's selling a gallon of bathwater, which is first of all a shipping nightmare. Second
I'll
of
do
all,
it.
who wants the thing is, I think a pint of bathwater is novel, but then you think of who's the type of person that wants a gallon. You know what I mean?
I don't understand who was buying bathwater.
No one
No
bought
one.
it. No one bought it.
No, in general, who's buying anyone's bathwater?
OnlyFans.
There's a lot of people in
Amaranth.
this world.
Amaranth.
Lord, come quickly.
You're gonna love this. Amaranth, we did a podcast with her. She said she made like tens of thousands of dollars
Oh, I remember that.
selling her farts.
Just tell us what you think about this.
I mean, I don't feel good about it. I feel like but here's the thing. To me, that's
It's
similar
amoral,
to selling
right?
an
It's business.
NFT. It has as much value, truthfully.
I think
So,
it probably has less,
Except
honestly.
it doesn't stink as much of an
I
as
think
an
whoever
NFT does.
whoever bought that, like, they have serious issues,
You think
do.
so?
serious mental health issues.
What if it's $50 though?
Any
You
amount of
wouldn't-
money?
What if it's like a couple bucks? You wouldn't just...
If someone
what
did it
price
as a
would that
gag, that's fine. But I still think if like, hey, watch this. But I think anyone that does, they're not doing okay. You know what I
Right.
mean? Whoever's buying.
No,
it.
I would actually completely agree with that. I don't
it's-
like having
it's
hard takes on the
worrisome.
podcast, but I would agree with
I
that.
think it's
yeah.
funny though.
It's if you did it as a
I just think
gag.
whoever bought that was not trying to be funny. I truly think they're not okay.
I think it would be hilarious if you have a shelf of awards and stuff like that. You have just a glass jar.
And
Be
like, what's
what's
up
that
with that?
jar? And it's Amaranth's fart.
How did we get here,
George?
How did we get? Not as a podcast, as a society.
That's a good question.
I'd
That's
still
a
sell the bathwater, by the way. 10 grand, 1 gallon bathwater.
George, you seem to be disgusted by a lot of what goes on in society today. What do you
I
think?
am.
What do you think are these biggest issues?
I think we are too bored. I think we need real problems. The fact that this is what we're all about is like we either have too much disposable income or not enough problems. And so I don't think we have our priorities straight. I think we're all honestly we're a little bit fatalist. There's sort of like, what is life? What is meaning? I think we're going to have a big sort of search for meaning as a society.
Like
Because
another Renaissance era?
We're too evolved as a species.
You think we're too soft?
Well, I think we have everything we could ever want for and more. And now we're reverting to like, we all want to go camping to go see what it's like to not have electricity for a night. You know what I mean? Like we are circling all the way back to caveman era because we have everything we could ever want. And so I think we are very entitled as a culture, as an American people, consumerist culture. And, the fact that people are spending money on farts and OnlyFans is proof of that.
I do think that it is a
We're desperate
necessity
for connection.
of existence to face adversity in some way, shape, or form, to have some adversity. And I think that's getting harder and harder to come by for a lot of people. So a lot
Well,
of people
they'll tell
create
you
their
they have
own.
problems as they, tweet at it from their $1,500 smartphone.
But are they problems? Are they real problems?
To them, it is. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone, first world problem is still a problem to that person. But, people call into the show and they're living with their parents, which is fine. I'm not angry at that. But at some point, like, you need to just get out and pay some freaking bills and have some work ethic. And I think we've gotten real comfortable as a society with all these fallbacks, and we can just go into debt and live whatever life we want at no cost to us, essentially.
But how would you solve that issue? Because people are not going to voluntarily make their life more challenging.
No. But I mean, Michael Easter has an incredible book called The Comfort Crisis that I think everyone should read, where he kind of talks about this very issue. How we've gotten so comfortable. We've all seen the movie WALL-E. We're sort of stepping into that water where we're all just like glaring at screens all day, walking through life. We hate our jobs and we're just finding ways to spend our money so that we can feel something. And to me, that's sad that we've gotten here, but it's where we are. And so that's where I think the Ramsey plan sort of like kicks you into reality to like force you to have some discipline and sacrifice in your life. I think is a great thing because it causes personal growth and it causes you to have control in other areas of your life, like your physical health. The amount of times we've seen people who get out of debt, but then their marriages get better, they're physically healthier, is amazing to me because I think transformation begets transformation.
But how do you get someone interested in doing that in the first place? If they're already comfortable,
They got to want it. You know, like what made you start working out?
Look better.
But you really had to want it.
Yeah.
Because you didn't look bad to begin with, but you had to get to a point where like, this is a priority for me, and it's a problem enough that I want to solve. I'm willing to do what it takes. I'm willing to go to the gym 3 times a week. Same thing applies to finances. I'm willing to do that budget every single month and actually stick to the plan because I want to see the results.
But if you look at data, most people are comfortable being quote unquote mediocre.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like not going to the gym.
They're
not
comfortable with
saving
their
up.
payments because they can afford the payments. Therefore,
But it's been a
what's to
change
worry
over
about?
time, and I don't think human nature has changed. So it must be something in the external environment that's changed, correct?
Well, there's fear, you know, the economy and the headlines, and COVID definitely spooked a lot of people. But again, I think it has to get to this point where you're like, this life ain't it. I deserve better. I worked too hard to feel this broke. That's the point you have to get to actually start following the plan. Now, it doesn't have to get to that point. I've just found most people have to get to some sort of rock bottom, like, this sucks. There's a better life. I deserve better for myself. I'm going to go after it.
You think it would be a detriment to the economy if everyone got out of debt? If no one had debt, what would
This is a
happen?
fun hypothetical. I truly think everything would get better. I know there's fear because we will have a debt-based economy and some things would crash. I'm totally comfortable with all of the debt companies crumbling to nothing if no one took out debt, right? If everyone became debt-free, then Capital One and American Express and Sallie Mae, they all go to crap. Wells Fargo, whatever. All the lending arms. Now, people will still have banks, but they're not going to make as much money, so it'll just be less profitable. They can't sponsor Taylor Swift tours anymore. We'll be okay. But I do think people would spend out of their values more. We might spend less as a society, but we'd spend on things that we actually care about, and the economy would still be great. We'd be supporting more local businesses. We'd just be giving less money to lenders and giving it more to people that really deserve it. That's my hot take. I don't know if that's true. I'm not an economist, but that's my gut, is that we'd all be happier and spending on things we really care about instead of flexing. Because think about it, every type of debt has gone out of control because, look at tuition. The colleges were like, we can just raise tuition and people will just keep taking out more debt. Cars, we can just raise the price of cars and people will take out more car loans. And so this applies in every area of debt, and it's part of the reason we're at record levels of every single type of debt in America. $17 trillion in consumer debt alone.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we have access to it.
Now, my worry would be the economy would slow down to such a huge extent that asset values would have to fall, stock prices would have to fall, and people might have to find an alternative means of investing long term because of that.
But companies would still prosper. If we're spending money, we're
It
still
would
buying.
completely- yeah.
I have more money now to spend on that Apple product, so Apple's going to do great. I'm going to spend money on this Tesla. So you're still supporting the companies. You're cutting out the middleman of the lenders. And so the companies themselves that I'm invested in, most of them aren't attached to debt.
Well, I guess in a way you would have $1 trillion less of spending throughout our economy because that's what the credit card debt is. Just consumer debt, $1 trillion. On top of that, I don't know how many trillions for mortgage debt. How much
I think
money
we're
for...
I think we're at 12 trillion in mortgages alone.
and then auto loan debt. So
That's
I think
1.57 or 8 trillion.
across the board without debt, I think everything would fall because how many people would be able to buy a house outright? There would have to be payment plans in place.
Sure, mortgages are the one, we don't yell at people for having a mortgage, but I think consumer debt is what's killing us. I don't think the everyday person is dying because of the mortgage. It's, I have all this debt plus this mortgage that I really couldn't afford, but I felt like I had to get in the housing market earlier rather than later because of pressures or whatever. And so I think it's just compounding the problem. But, owning a house is a great path to wealth. I just think if you do it right, it'll be more of a blessing than a burden.
Do you think that now is a good time to buy a house?
Yes, if you're financially ready. Now, I still think I believe in the economy and the U.S. housing market will continue to go up over time. I don't think houses are going to be significantly cheaper in any point in the future, and history has proven that. I don't think there's going to be another 2008, fingers crossed, because we've solved a lot of the problems that caused that. But I think when you have no debt, a fully funded emergency fund, and a down payment, you are financially ready to buy a house.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't try to time the market and wait for the interest rates to move a certain way. I would go ahead and do that. We say, date the rate, marry the house.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? 84% of people say that now is a bad time to buy a house. 84%.
Is that because of prices and interest rates?
Yes.
Okay.
Interest rates were the number one reason that overtook home prices. So it's because of interest rates that number is so high. You know, the last time it was also similarly high?
When's that?
2010.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Interesting. So after the housing crisis.
Yes. A lot of people also felt now is a bad time to buy. So it's very interesting because I was having
Which
a
was
discussion
one of
with
the
somebody.
best times to buy,
exactly.
looking back.
So I was having a discussion with somebody the other day, and we were talking about how so many people say now is a bad time to buy. But if you typically do the opposite of what the mass seems to think is the better option, usually that kind of works. Like, to me, it's hard to wrap my mind around it when I see home prices so high, mortgages so high, the cost of renting so cheap relative to that. But, you know, when you look at what most people are doing, if you just do the opposite, in most cases, you're better off.
That's fascinating.
So it'll be very interesting to see what happens over these next 10 years. If interest rates come down, I guess there's a chance.
Yeah.
Everyone rushes into
But
the
here's
market.
the thing, and you can tell me this,
Yeah.
if interest rates go down, we're probably going to see a spike in home prices.
Yes and no. The variable to that is how many sellers sell. So right now we're seeing high home prices because there's
But
not a lot
nobody
of
wants to
inventory.
sell because they're low interest rates.
But if interest rates go down to about 5%, they're saying that's the magic number where all of a sudden, if I have a 3.5% mortgage, it doesn't hurt as much to give that up for 5%, but it does to 6%.
Interesting.
And so they're saying 5% is the magic number that would prompt more sellers to sell who are thinking about selling, who have those handcuffs. So there's a chance interest rates come down, buyers come in the market, but there's a lot of sellers who say, oh, finally, I could, afford to buy something else and not have to worry about it. I don't care about giving up my 4% mortgage for 5%. It's not that big of a deal. So maybe the market gets flooded with inventory. There's also the theory that as that flood comes in, more sellers will say, oh, the market's going down. I'm thinking about selling in 5 years, but let me sell it now really quick before values go down even further. And my neighbors are selling, and let me
get spooked.
Let me beat them to it, and I'll price myself a little lower than they are. There's a chance. There's also a chance people say, I'm going to hold on to my house and,
see what happens.
And buyers have more purchasing power and values go up. It's a total
Interesting.
coin toss. I wish there should be a way to figure out what's going to happen in this and run the numbers.
But I think the
it's
key is we're not going to see a crash, regardless of what your thumbnail said. But I know what you say in the video. It's not going to happen.
Gotta watch the
They're
video.
like, the crash is happening. And I'm like, no, it's not. Don't lie to me, Graham. So I still have faith.
The shocking thing is that monthly payments are up 70% since 2020. Now that is low in terms of monthly payments.
Sure.
But when you think 70% more.
Those interest
3
rates,
years.
it definitely compounds
Yeah.
that payment, and it hurts people, and it makes it less affordable.
But at what price? At what point does that impact prices? I mean, a 70% increase in monthly payments from those who bought 3 years ago to today.
Yeah.
How much do home prices have to come down to balance things out, if at all?
Only time will tell. But I do feel for people who want to be homeowners, and it's just feeling like more and more, they're just so sad and hopeless at this point because they need a huge down payment, and they're still straddled with debt. And so the only thing you can do is try to get out of debt, get the emergency fund, and build that down payment as high as you can get it to where you can then afford the payment.
And what would you say to someone who says, I just want to rent?
I have no problem with renting. I think renting is very wise, which is another hot take. I know some people agree, and you'd probably be with me on this one, but renting is buying yourself patience. And I've seen people who did it the other way. They said, well, I told renting is a waste of money. I'm going to go buy a house. Then they call the Ramsey show, and they're like, hey, we're screwed. This mortgage payment is 65% of our take-home pay, and life happened, and we don't know what to do. And now we're looking to sell because we're in this bind. And so I'd rather you do it with patience and buy it when you're ready, even if the price is higher, the interest rates, whatever. Because when you do it and the mortgage payment is that much your take-home pay, you can't live the rest of your life. And so you have no peace. Even though you're a homeowner, it's the American dream, your life sucks. And so we've just seen too much of the other side of when things don't work out perfectly.
What are the most disturbing calls you get on the Ramsey show?
Oh my gosh. I mean, obviously there's the really sad ones, addiction problems, loved one passing way too soon, people co-signing and getting into really murky situations, especially when it comes to Parent Plus loans are a real problem where parents are now like, hey, my kid stopped paying and now the loan's on me and I'm trying to retire and I don't have the money to pay this thing. We're seeing so many people underwater on car loans. It's almost every single call we ask them and they're underwater on the car loan not by 1,000, but by 10,000. So those are really sad as well. And there's also the people who have lower incomes and we're telling them, hey, you're making $16 an hour. That's not going to cut it. You need to go making 20, 25, get some education, do whatever you have to do because they barely can pay the bills. So there's a lot of people hurting out there. And obviously, Ramsey show is largely people with money problems. You know, we get a few that are doing really well. They're like, I have $3 million. What do I do with it? And we're all like, oh, boo-hoo, you know, send me a Venmo. But the majority of people, like, life has happened and they're in a predicament. They haven't prepared financially for it, and we're just trying to help them take the right next step.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult thing to do in, you know, 6 minutes of a call, but our goal is to give them a little bit of hope. That's all you can really do in 6 minutes is give them hope and just a next step and a partial plan, and maybe we give them a product tool to help them along.
Is there anything that doesn't get aired?
In recent memory, I don't think we've ever had to cut a call. Sometimes if someone cusses, we'll have to hit the dump button, is what it's called, where they cut the last 10 seconds. So that's happened on occasion. But as far as something getting cut completely, I don't think that's happened in a few years. Usually whatever is screened and makes it to air, it's then live on radio. It's live on, it goes to podcast pretty soon. It's on YouTube an hour later. So everything's pretty much out there.
Do people ever fake the calls? Like, are there situations where you're like, oh, this is not real?
There's ones where people think we either planned a fake call, which we never do. Sometimes we'll schedule a call. If someone emails us and it's a great call, we'll go and schedule it with them. But we don't plan fake situations for people to call in to create great content.
But do they sneak through?
Occasionally we'll get the troll here and there. And the phone screeners are amazing at sniffing that out. So props to them for doing that. But sometimes they'll make it to air and Dave's like, that was a troll. So we've seen that a few times. Some of them aren't as malicious as others. Yeah. Some of them are malicious, where they're trying to rile up Dave or whatever.
What do they say? Are they just like, I'm
trying to think of some
of
of
all this debt, and should I buy the Ferrari? And I'm 16,
some of them are just they want to argue with Dave about one of his principles. That's usually what it is. It's usually wanting to argue with Dave, and it's some 18-year-old that thinks he knows better than Dave, and he's like, well, Dave, I don't understand. Why wouldn't I take the spread on the interest rate? Those kinds of things.
We had a clip that went mega viral. You may as well ask it now.
Okay, all right. If you could borrow $1 billion at 0% interest for 10 years, would you do it?
$1 billion, 0% interest for 10 years, would I do it? No.
Why?
I would be crushed under the weight of trying to manage that well and not lose it all. It would be frightening. And I know you're thinking, well, just put it in a, high yield savings account and T-bills and you'll make your money back. So, no, in this wild hypothetical scenario where I could borrow $1 billion at 0%, I wouldn't do it. And that's part of it is my values of I just don't borrow money. And it's a principle that I live by. So it would go against my own moral compass. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. And to me, that's not worth the spread I could make.
Now, what if it's something smaller, more manageable? $10 million. Interest-free, 10 years.
I mean, what's those 10,000? That wouldn't interest me. I don't think it's an amount to me. I think I truly have such a, and it's not well, you work for Dave Ramsey, so of course you're going to say that. It truly, it's not attractive to me at all to take on any amount of debt.
What if you could borrow $1 billion at negative 1% interest for 10 years?
That hurts my brain. So you're saying they're paying me?
You have to pay back.
This is how it goes. I think in Venezuela or something. They have is it Venezuela?
There's a few countries with negative interest rates. Yeah. I don't think Venezuela is not one of them because their inflation is so high.
Are they paying you to take on debt?
You pay back less than you borrow. So let's just say you borrowed $1 million. You would pay back $990,000 at the end of the term. Oh. So would you borrow $1 billion at negative 1% interest?
I don't think a discounted loan is of any interest to me.
No.
At $1 billion at 1%?
I think what it is it just, you have abundance already. So
what would I do? What would I do?
But that's just saying they'll give you $10 million.
I can understand the take of you have abundance, and acquiring more money just for the sake of money is of no interest to you. I understand that. Yeah. And I think that's the only argument that I could actually come to odds with. I guess I truly don't know
what more money would do for me. Because I don't have, you guys are doing very well.
You could upgrade your car.
There's still an iota
we just
of
upgraded
stress.
my wife's car, and it's the nicest car I've holy crap. And I still am okay, what now? You know what I mean? We could upgrade in house, and that's a dream of ours, to upgrade and pay cash for our next house and have a bigger house for fun. But truly, I'm I don't know what I would buy, what experience I would take that would add that much value to my life. What item, what experience. Right. I don't know. I'm not going to retire. What am I going to, I'm not going to sit and watch Netflix for the next 30 years. There's no businesses I want to start. I like what I do. I like the team I do that with. I'm paid very well for it. So I'm like,
Well,
I don't know.
charities you could give.
That's true. So if I could borrow $1 billion at 0%, invest that money, give all of the proceeds to charity, I would become a
You would do
wonderful philanthropist.
Let's
still
have that
don't
on
think I would do
record.
it.
Would you do it? Negative 1% interest, and you donate it all to charity. Do we get a
I'd
yes?
have to really think through that. I would let someone else do it, and I'd be happy for them.
I
It's not
understand because there
transferable.
still is, like I said,
That's still
just
a weight.
an iota
That's still
of
an
stress.
emotional
it
weight.
still is weight. It still is something, and
Like
you
I
don't
owe,
need that.
I owe. So at the end of the day, regardless of what's happening with that billion, I owe someone $1 billion. Like that is such
But
an
you have $1 billion.
unfathomable.
You owe someone 900 and something million.
Right now, I have it. But if I invested, let's say, I don't know. I know
Treasuries.
T-bills are probably the safest
Yeah.
bet right now, or a high-yield savings account at 5%. It still would wait. Like I would be thinking about that $1 billion every day. You know what I mean? Like there's not a day that goes by that you're still not thinking, holy crap, $1 billion is sitting out there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's too much weight for me. I truly could not handle it. I'll let
You
someone
could
else.
pay it off early.
I'd pay it off instantly. And go,
Point
"Oh,
is, I don't think he's going to do it. What I appreciate
I
about
don't
you,
know. I truly.
That's funny.
Now,
No,
it's so
it's-
hypothetical that it's hilarious.
Right,
So it's like
it's not meant to be a trap. Like
Yeah.
I'm worried a lot of people thought that when I was asking Dave this question that it was like supposed to be a trap. I just wanted to ask him because I thought it would be
Imagine he said yes.
funny. You'd be like,
Yeah, I'll do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You'd be
absolutely.
stupid not to
yeah,
do
I'd
that.
love to get another Ferrari.
Yeah, and I'm not Dave. Like I never went bankrupt, and because I was over leveraged and the bank called the notes. Like I never,
Right.
you know, my story is much more of the average person going a little bit into consumer debt, 40 grand, paying it off, and living a better life on the other side.
What I want to understand is Graham still, and we talked to Dr. John Thaloni about this, has this scarcity mentality when it comes to a lot of different areas of his life, specifically financially. And you have this abundance mentality in the exact same way that Graham has a scarcity mentality. It bleeds into every other part of your life. And what I find really interesting, and I don't mean this in any sort of like nag or a dig or anything, Graham has a lot more money.
A whole lot
Yet
more.
he still feels this scarcity. And I really respect, and I just want to like decode how you have this level of peace and abundance in your life with such less money.
Got paid off mortgage.
It's to pay it off
But
mortgage.
it can't just be that. It has to
No.
be something else. Because what is it that led you to paying off that mortgage?
I
right?
think if you really look at the emotional underpinning of it, it just comes down to contentment. Like I know it's that simple and it's that hard, right? To be like, well, I'm just content. Like I'm a very anxious person naturally. And so to remove any level of, you know, pieces of anxiety out of my life, one of those being debt, has been really helpful to give me a little bit of just peace. And so I think at the end of the day, I'm content with where I'm at. And yes, I still have goals and there's things that I'd love to do, but I don't have there's no end game. There's nothing like, well, once I get 5 million, I'm retiring and that's it. Now I hope to have 5 million one day in a retirement account and we're able to retire and still have a great income and go on amazing trips and all of that. But I have no end game. What I've been trying to do as I get older is just live in the present instead of always going like, well, what's the next thing? Because for too long, for the last 10 years, I've been doing that with my career, with my financial goals, with whatever it is. And so I'm truly, and it's something I'm still working on. This is not like I have not mastered it. I'm not like some kind of Zen Yoda character. I just truly suck at living in the present. I'm always thinking about what's happening tomorrow, what's on the schedule, what are we going to do, what about that thing? Instead of just, now that I have a baby, I think it changed the way I view my time, the way I view money. And like you stare into this baby's eyes and like time just like disappears. Like it doesn't matter anymore when you're staring into that baby's eyes. So I think having a family changes the mentality around that. I'm curious as you progress and, you know, you have a family or you have kids or whatever, I wonder if that's going to change that for you and if you have a different set of goals and a different lens.
I find that
Maybe.
interesting.
But
that
it just
you
feels like
relate
it's
it.
exhausting because I'm like, there's no end. Like, I don't know. If I could go start a business and make $100 million, how would my life change? Would it make it worse? Maybe. And I think that's something a lot of people don't think about. Because with more money and more responsibility, you know, it changes things.
If you got everything you wanted, would you be happier? Who's to say?
That's the question at the end of the day. And what do we want? I don't think we really know as humans. And I do think we've talked about this before. My faith is a big underpinning of this that I think I'd be remiss to not mention because I think it changes your long-term view of life, of like what's happening ahead when I die. What has this all been about? You start thinking about those big questions. What I want people to say about me at my funeral. Are they going to be like, man, His YouTube videos were hilarious. I doubt it. I think they're going to say he was a great friend. He was an amazing husband. He was a loving father. That's what they say. And we joked about this on your gravestone. Your net worth's not going to be like written on there. And Graham's like, mine will. I was like, that's actually a pretty baller move, and I respect the hustle there. But it's like, what is this all for? Like, let's say you go in the dirt. What happens then? Who would you leave your money to? What impact did you have? Did it make any impact at all? And so to me, now I'm like, what is the ripple effect I want to have? Well, number one, I want generational wealth for my family. I want my daughter to inherit whatever legacy we've built up and nest egg, and for her to manage that wisely, and for her to live a life we can't imagine because of the work that we did and the sacrifice we made. I want to be able to give to charities and pay for an adoption and buy single parents cars and just do things that like make my, like we just gave 10 grand to Waffle House employees in 3 hours. And to me, that was the most fun I've had with money in a long time. Way more than buying my wife a new car, way more than paying off the house. To see someone's life change instantly because of something I was able to do that was in my control, I'm like, that's amazing to me. And so like the stuff Mr. Beast is doing, of course, like that's the stuff we're going to be talking about for generations to come versus look at the net worth that he amassed. You know what I mean?
I like that. I like giving to people that are working at Waffle House. And I know that sounds silly, but I'm a big proponent of like I like to tip big. That's like kind of my way of giving back.
Amazing.
Is like I generally tip higher percentages, a lot higher than the average person. And that's kind of like I take a lot of pride, I think, in that. And I
But
love
you're
that
able to do
giving
that because you have margin.
Yeah.
Like
right.
if you were broke and you had payments up to your eyeballs living a lifestyle that you were trying to maintain, you wouldn't be able to give in that way. And so that's one of the reasons that I want people to live debt free, because you can't help but have more margin to do those things when you don't have payments to make.
What I find interesting is you said that your anxiety comes from you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And that's the same thing Dr. John Deloney said. And that's the same thing I see in Graham whenever he's explaining his financial anxiety is like, you don't know what could happen to the market. It could half. And then once it halves, you don't know what could happen from there. And then you don't know what can happen from there. It's never like stuff that is
It's like
current,
apocalyptic
that is
scenarios.
currently
It
ever
is.
happening.
Like, do you ever have a real fear that like the world could end? Because at that point, what are you going to do?
No, I don't. I have a fear that our
Like stock
growth,
market goes to zero.
No,
you
no.
know?
Let's just say the worst case, 1929 happens, something crazy like that. Let's just say it's 50%. Well, then you take 50% off everything, let's just say. Then how could I live off that 50%? Okay, I'll find a way to live off the 50%.
Now that's if
But
you're
then,
like at retirement age. Because if you just
no,
hang
but
on,
I
hang on to the ride,
also assume that my income goes to zero. I just assume like I'm somewhat like
Wow.
incapacitated.
YouTube is shut
or,
down.
Or that I just choose
Real
voluntarily
estate.
where I don't want to be forced to do something. So I take it in
Yeah.
half. How could I live off the half? I live off the half. And then I kind of think, well, I want a bit of a buffer on top of that just to give myself some flexibility in case things get even worse. So that's how I kind of think of things. I want to keep the lifestyle without having to worry about if things drop
but
by
what
half.
lifestyle? Because you're a pretty frugal guy. If things like really got tight, you would be fine.
I'd find a way, but I don't want to downgrade because it's like every year I've increased my lifestyle a little bit. Like let's just say it's 5% a year.
Okay.
But I do that purposely so that I can sustain that. Sustain. Why can't I say?
It's a hard one.
I want to be able
It's
to
a challenging conversation.
sustain that sort of lifestyle creep.
But I
So
think
I
people,
purposely do it a little bit every
people
year.
making a tenth of what you make spend more than you do in a month.
Yeah, but just because I want to be able to sustain that, like, lifestyle creep and never have to worry about it. So, yeah, you could spend way more. You can spend 100%.
But you also, know how to make money. Like that's, I think, a skill that will carry you through any,
But
thick or thin.
I like not being forced to do that. Like, anytime I feel forced to do something, I just don't like doing it
It's
for
less
whatever
exciting.
reason. Yeah, I like doing things that...
If I was like, Graham, you have to make these videos every week, you'd be like, screw you,
Oh,
man, I'm
absolutely
not doing
not.
it.
Just having the freedom to say, if I want to stop at any point, I can. And that makes me very happy.
Yeah. And again, that kind of freedom, I think you have more options when you have no debt.
Yeah.
And obviously you have your
Like-
cash position that you've talked about. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I could pay it on, I could not. I just feel like at the end of the day, I'm going to have less stress about it if things go downhill, having no debt.
Yeah, like a while ago, I got an offer to buy a part of my main channel, It was very enticing because the valuation they were giving me on the main channel was insane.
This is
And it
like
was,
Shark Tank.
Yeah, it was 2021 though, and I knew that like this is the cheapest money is ever going to be. It was a startup company. They had a ton of venture capital. They were valuing it way higher than I ever thought it was. But they said that I'd have to create 3 videos a week for the next 5 years.
Oh.
And that for me was killed it.
This reminds
Was
me of like
never
the
have
genie
done
in
that.
Aladdin, you know, where he's like,
Yeah.
he's forced. He's got the handcuffs when he's working for
Yeah,
Jafar.
and but
Remember
I mean,
that?
yeah, it was a minority stake, so it wouldn't change anything. But it was just like the output had to stay the same.
Yeah.
I knew I just don't want to be locked into making 3 videos a week for 5 years. It sounds
Yeah.
bad. It's just like,
Well,
I don't like
that's the
being
thing. We
forced to do
all
that.
want options and freedom.
Yeah.
And so we have different paths to get there. But I just think mine has proven over time to be a path anyone can take.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people can be. I mean, you guys are successful. You've done it your way. And I think a lot of your tribe and audience, they'll do it your way and they'll be okay. Like the fact they're even watching this channel tells me they're going to be okay. But we talk to very different people. Like the people we're talking to, they're going through things. You know, they're not watching YouTube videos for fun. They're watching them because they need help. And so it's a very different mindset. And so I try to entertain and it be informative. But at the end of the day, like there's people who need help. And therefore, like I can argue about credit card interest all day. But there's a single mom who's about to call in and be like, I just lost my husband. I got 3 kids. Do I do daycare? What do I do? And so I'm like, holy crap. Like there's real problems in the world. And this is a luxury and privilege that we get to even have these kinds of conversations.
That's very
So
true.
I think in my role, it just, you have a very different perspective, seeing what people are really going through. And it makes me more averse to risk and to debt because I've seen what it does to people, you know?
Yeah.
Like Andre, like he's like, I've seen my family struggle with gambling addiction. I'll never gamble. It's not interesting to him. And the same happens with debt to me. I'm like, I've seen too many people hurt by debt. Why would I want to play this game only to get bit by a snake later on?
Yeah. What's the most surprising thing that you've learned from Dave Ramsey?
I think his tenacity and grit and perseverance is awe-inspiring. Like the fact that this guy is still at it 30 years later with more energy and more passion than ever before. I'm like, I want to be that invested in whatever I'm doing. And so he keeps us on our toes. But what I've learned from him there is that work is about more than work. Like it's not a job. It's not something where I'm just like, I'm doing it for the paycheck and one day, I'll call it quits. Like this dude is going to keep going until he can't keep going, and he'll probably outlive me just out of sheer spite. But his passion around it has just really inspired me to go like, obviously that thing for me is personal finance, and I didn't realize that until later on in my life. But also the way he's leaving a legacy, like the way he's thinking so future. I mean, he's been thinking about personalities for a long time. You guys talked about this. His succession plan. You joked about Dave Ramsey's retirement plan. Everyone's like, no, Dave, don't go. I'm like, he's not going anywhere. But it was a good title. I'll give you that. So it's just made me think more big picture, more long term, and less about like, what am I doing? What's my thing? And more, what's everyone around me? How are they being affected by my life? And so that's a really interesting way to frame things up.
What's something you think you can improve about your personal finances?
Oh man. I think my investing game, now that, I'm at the place we're at, like getting into brokerage accounts and like mega backdoor and all of that stuff is interesting to me. And I haven't dipped my toes in that water yet. But now that I'm there, I think investing is one area. And I think spending, like we're doing fine, but I think there's still ways that we've gotten lazy a little bit in kind of how we've been spending and getting that budget just tightened back up. Now that we have a baby girl, it's just like there's new expenses in our world. And so we need to readjust for some of that. And also like being more open. I think my generosity muscle needs some flexing because we were so like, we have these goals. We got to pay off this house. We're going to upgrade the car. And now that we have more freedom, it's like, what are the strategic ways we're going to give, and spontaneously planned, all kinds of ways. And so that's something I need to get better at. And seeing Dave and the way they've done that with the Family Foundation is really cool.
Have you ever given and been unimpressed by somebody's reaction?
Oh man. It's such a hard thing when you give because you're hoping, like selfishly, you're like, I hope this is a moment. And sometimes it's not. We paid off $10 million of debt. So Dave bought the book of debt from this company for $250,000. and it was 10 million worth.
Oh,
And so we got
like
to
a
make
debt
the phone
collections
calls. Yes,
sort of
a debt
thing.
collection. And so he bought $10 million worth of debt for 250 grand, and then we got to make the calls. All the Ramsey team members made calls
amazing.
to let the people know, hey, your debt has been paid off. And I remember I called this guy, and I was like, hey, this is George from Ramsey Solutions. Just want to let you know that car that you had in collections, this Nissan Maxima, has been paid off completely. And he said, I didn't ask you to do that. I was like, oh my gosh, this backfired. What do I
What?
say? He was upset.
Why? It's in collections.
I don't know. Well, the truth is these people haven't paid on this debt in a long time. They maybe don't care about it anymore. They've moved on. But I was just so taken aback. Like if that was me, I'd be like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like thank you so much. And so that was just like, you don't know what you're going to get on the other side of
Holy
generosity.
crap.
So that was a little lesson I learned there of like, set your expectations. It could go south.
What I've been doing is getting people's dinners. So sometimes we'll go out and I'll just see like a couple or,
You haven't
Jack-
got my dinner.
no,
Jack's like-
I won't get
well,
Jack's dinner. Jack doesn't eat. But
You're
it's
doing
like,
all right.
I'll see random people, or there's one guy, this guy kind of sat alone, an older guy, and I was like, I'm just getting his dinner. But I'll just tell the people secretly.
Oh,
I'll
that's
pay
cool.
for it. He doesn't know it's me.
Yeah.
No one knows it's me.
He just knows,
but
hey, someone has paid for your dinner.
someone's paid for your bill, usually after we've left.
That's cool.
And their bill is paid for. But I remember one time we went to a restaurant and we're sitting down and we saw this lady come in and she had a young child with her. And it was maybe like 9 p.m. And I'm thinking, is she waiting for something? Is it pickup? And then I realized she's doing the delivery service. And I thought, like, it's got to be maybe like a single mom, because obviously if like someone's at home, the kid wouldn't be out with her. And the kid looks like a young kid, like 4 or 5 years old, is kind of sitting, and like the mom's obviously doing this. And so I give her $100, and I say, hey, I just want to give you this. And I don't want to say I was unimpressed by your reaction. She was like, oh, thanks.
But you were hoping for a little bit more.
I was hoping for a little more. But anyway, you got to do it because you like doing it. But
Exactly.
the reaction would have been nice.
Yeah, no, that's a tough part. I mean, you were always hoping, and we got some of that when I gave the 10 grand at Waffle House at 3 different locations. We paid for everyone's tab. The shocking part is you could go into any Waffle House in America and cover the tab of the entire restaurant for $100. Like that was mind-boggling. Maybe $150 for a packed restaurant. Like that is such a cool thing to do. Just walk in and be like, hey, everyone here, $200, whatever anyone's tab is, I'm covering it, and here's a $50 tip to the waitress. That's just a cool, fun thing to do. And it's not a waffle. I mean, you can go to any place. But for some reason, talking to the people at Waffle House, like this lady had been shot in the chest by her kid's dad, who's clearly not in their life anymore. Single mom of 3 kids. She'll be working on Christmas Day. And so when I gave her $500, I mean, she was already in tears. And then I said, hey, you know what? What are you getting the kids for Christmas? She's like, I don't know. I'm working on Christmas Day. And I was like, I want these kids to have an amazing Christmas. Here's an extra $2,000.
Whoa.
And the floodgates opened. The coworkers are all hugging her. And it wasn't like a flex on my part. It wasn't even my money. It was Ramsey's money, and we just wanted to find a fun way to be generous. And I thought, let's go to Waffle House. But like that, to me, that affected me more than her potentially. You know what I mean? Like I'll never forget that, of just the power of, $2,000. That's still a lot of money, but it changes her world. You know what I mean? And so whatever we think is a lot of money to someone else, or we don't think is a lot of money to someone else, is life-changing, whether it's in another country or whatever.
I like that over charities because you get to see the impact firsthand. And I feel like sometimes you give to a charity and it's more just like, you get these things in the mail every now. Thanks for your donation.
You don't get to see
you get
the
to
fruits
see,
of
I
your
like
labor.
to see the impact it makes on people firsthand.
Also, you do not know how efficient charities are with their spending.
Oh,
I don't know how
Yeah, a
efficient
lot
they
of
are.
that, they spend a lot of money on marketing.
Well, you know what's really cool?
And one other thing, I gave to a few different charities earlier this year, and ever since then, for the past like 6
Oh, you
months,
getting bombarded?
every single
They
time
hit
I
you
open
up?
the mailbox, they text me, my emails. It's like,
like,
yo,
bro,
I gave
chill.
you a good chunk of change.
Yeah.
It's like it every
The
single
worst
time.
are the animal ones.
Oh, they know how to get you.
That is never ending, and
Yeah.
they send you photos. Thank you for your
Picture of a
donation.
sad puppy
to,
in the mail.
you know,
What are you trying to do to me?
whatever it is.
Have
'Cause
you
I did that at
guys-
Petco, and I signed up for one of those things. And it's just,
Have you guys heard of Charity Water? It's run by a guy named Scott Harrison, and he has revolutionized charity. Because here's what he did. He said, hey, I'm going to change the game. 100% of your donation goes to fund water projects in Africa. And so you're wondering, well, how does they cover overhead and bills and all that? They cover that with private donors. So a group of private donors comes together to cover salary, overhead, all of that. And 100% of donations go straight to the project. And they even have found a way to track your donation to the exact water project, and they will follow up.
Awesome.
That's
So
fantastic.
you can go in online and see the exact location of your water project, the status of it, and the people affected by it, sharing their stories. And to me, that is like what every charity in America needs to get to. So I love that model of private donors cover salary and overhead, and consumer donations go 100%.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of transparency that will cause more people to give. Because
I
there's
love that
there's a
model.
clear distrust.
Yeah.
And there's like sites like Charity Navigator that help with this, which is cool. But I think that's a really cool model.
I have a question. Now, don't feel like you need to answer this question. I don't know if it like will cause any tension or anything.
I just won't answer if I don't want to.
Yeah, by all means, and we can cut it out. But
Dave is not my dad.
dang it, man. Everyone wanted
People
to know.
wonder.
No, Dave was under fire recently for 8% withdrawal rate. What do you think about that? Do you think 8% withdrawal rate is fine? Do you think that could be a good benchmark for people when they're trying to retire?
I think there's certain situations where that would be totally fine. If you follow the Ramsey plan and you have a giant nest egg and that's your plan, then that's sustainable. If you look at real numbers, hypothetically, like this is all, it's like your $1 billion question. Would you get $1 billion and do this? The realistic numbers are if you had $2 million in retirement and you were withdrawing 8%, you would be okay with a paid for house, money in the bank, and you would adjust. And Dave said on the show with Rachel was like, well, hey, what if the return that year was 10% instead of 12? You go, well, you could take it down to 6%. But the key here is being flexible with your spending in retirement. So in retirement, if you're going, I need 12 grand to sustain this or else it's all going to fall apart, you've already failed. You need to have a lot of margin for error in retirement. And that's why we tell people, like, invest 15% as soon as you're out of debt. Once you have the house paid off, invest way more, max out retirement accounts. So the amount of people who are actually having to live this out is probably slim to none. The argument of 4% or 6% or 8%. And there's a lot of studies that show, because all of this is based on the Monte Carlo simulation.
or the Trinity study.
Trinity study, Monte Carlo situation. And so a lot of them showed you could have negative money in retirement. You could have way more than you ever imagined in
But
retirement.
it's the failure rate. If Dave Ramsey's
It's the failure
8%
rate.
over
It's
30,
48% or 60% failure rate.
It was
Depending
at
on
a
who you
point,
looked at.
it was over a 30-year time frame, but there was a high failure rate. And it's like, do you want to give that to a 50-50 coin flip of failing that? Assuming you keep your expenses at 8% adjusted for inflation every year beginning the first year. The other thing is that if you have a few bad years initially, it's almost 100%
sequence of
failure
risk
rate.
return is what you're
Absolutely.
talking about. Yeah, sure. And I think realistically, people adjust lifestyle depending on market conditions. And so that's why I think what Dave was saying was there's a lot of hope stealers out there who are like, if you don't have $2 million, you're screwed because you have to do 4%. If you don't do that, you're screwed. What Dave's saying is you're going to be okay. If you have no debt and $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in retirement, you're going to have a fine life and you can withdraw more than 4%.
Did Dave talk to you at all about this after the call? Because it seemed like he said, if George said something like that, we're going to take the video down.
Oh, yeah. Well, the producer talked to him. He was like, hey, the caller took that out of context maliciously. Here's what George actually said. And Dave was like, oh, okay, cool. And moved on with his day. But no, we didn't
crazy
have
on Twitter because we know this.
The financial community blew
Dude,
up over this.
The day before posting our Dave
exhausting.
Ramsey video, this blew up on Twitter. And I was texting Jack. I'm like, dude, you see this stuff going down on Twitter? Tens of millions of views. Everyone is posting memes of like Dave Ramsey with like Lambos and this luxury lifestyle.
Oh my
like
gosh.
withdrawing 8%.
That's hilarious.
It was hilarious.
Well, the financial
Just the
community
memes
for a
is like-
long time has loved to use Dave as a punching bag for clicks and views. We all know that. And at the same in the same clip, Dave has helped millions of people, and these people are in their mom's basement with their, they just became financial advisors and they have an opinion. And they've helped almost nobody. And so I get why they're railing against it. And their job is to, be financial advisors and do whatever the financial community does. But I think it's such a funny hypothetical situation and argument and so nerdy that I'm like, again, it's a wonderful argument to have. The fact is people aren't saving for retirement. So whether we're going to argue about 4 or 6 or 8% is a silly thing when I'm like, people aren't even investing.
Is there anything you disagree with Dave about?
I'm trying to think, like, obviously we agree on our anti-debt stance. We agree on the investing stance, and he's cool in index funds as well. He invests in index funds in a brokerage account when he gets like a bonus check. But we have the same investing strategy, philosophy. We're probably invested in the same funds in our 401k. I'm probably more like on the millennial side. I'm probably just into things that he may not be into. One being Teslas. He's a Tesla hater, unfortunately. But that's not really a financial. He still would probably say it was a bad financial decision that Rachel and I drive Teslas. But as far as spending goes, I don't think we have much to disagree on. I mean, and it's not even like I'm towing the company line of like, I have to agree with Dave on everything. I fully agree with the baby steps. And we've went back and forth about baby step 1, $1,000 emergency fund, and debt avalanche for a snowball, and what is a full emergency fund, and what's the best way to invest. But truly, like, I've lived out his principles and they worked. And so like I only have good things to say, not only because of my experience, but millions of others that have come before me and after me.
Do you have any advice for Dave Ramsey?
Don't let the trolls get to you, Dave.
Do they?
Well, I think like he'll get riled up, on air. And I have more patience with the like 20-year-old who wants to argue about the nerdy stuff. And I think at this point he's just like, I got people to help, man. Why are you clogging up my phone lines wanting to argue about this thing? You know what I mean? I don't think Dave needs any of my advice. I think he's doing great. He's living his values out beautifully. He just went to Egypt for like 2 weeks with his wife.
I saw
an amazing trip.
He spent that 8%.
He spent a good, healthy chunk of money. So that's the cool thing about Dave is he's so balanced when it comes to spending, saving, and giving. Like we would call that a flat tire. He's great at spending money. He's great at resting. Like when he's not at work, the dude is at the lake house. He's enjoying himself in Cabo. He's living a great life. He's saving plenty of money. He's investing wisely for the future, and he's also giving outrageously. I mean, in ways that boggle my mind. And so I don't have any advice for Dave other than maybe I'm trying to think on the millennial side of things. I'd be like, come on, Dave, like loosen up on this thing. I'm trying to think generationally because, we get a bad rap, millennials, Gen Z. But even Dave is quick to say, like, there's Gen Zers that suck, there's Gen Zers that are awesome. And we see a lot of both. But I think he can give them, the Reddit community, a bad rap, for one, Twitter community. Sure. Because he only gets the trolls. And so in his mind, only trolls exist on those platforms. But sometimes, I appreciate the honesty of the people on there, saying their truth. But he's quick to block them as well.
If you could draw a pie of your net worth and where your money is allocated, what would it look like?
Okay, I'm going to be really boring, and you're going to disagree with it, but this is my true life. Because of the housing market and our paid-for house and how we over-indexed on that, that's 3/4 of our net worth is our paid-for house. The other, mostly that quarter, is going to be our 401ks. We both have Roth 401ks. I probably have double what my wife does because I've worked longer at Ramsey. I've made more money, and so because of that, the allocation of my 15% was just higher. So that's pretty much it. Other than that, we have our cars are a very small piece of our net worth. Our savings account and checking account are a very small part of our net worth. Majority, probably 95%, is house and 401ks. And I have a small IRA with about $6,000 from a rollover from when I worked at Apple. That's it. It's that boring. I have no crypto, no single stocks, no real estate property other than my primary home.
I want a one-word answer to this, okay?
Okay.
Do you think Graham and Macy should have joint accounts?
Gosh.
Does it just have to be a yes or no?
One-word answer.
Yes.
Graham, one-word answer.
I think they're... Now, this is caveat once they're married.
Okay.
Once they're married. Not a second sooner.
Right. And not a second later.
I mean, they can go on the honeymoon.
On the altar.
But as soon as they're back from the honeymoon, let's combine the
I
accounts.
think we have a joint, two separates.
The his and hers.
The his and hers.
Why?
With one joint.
Why? What is the benefit to Macy and what's the benefit to you?
I think mostly the benefits to me. I mean, when you look at it objectively.
Is
but
that
honestly,
fair?
But I think it is. I think it's perfectly fair.
What does she think about it?
But a lot of it is in certain accounts and investment brokerages that it just makes sense. It shouldn't necessarily be a joint account. It's
what
not
would
like
be the harm
expenses.
in saying, here's our joint checking, this is where we spend all of our money, and you have a line item of, hey, Macy, you can spend $500 on whatever you want. Graham gets $500.
Because she's able to do that anyway in her personal account.
So what's the difference if it's all joint?
Well, that's the joint account. Shared expenses go from that. So we still have a joint account. So she can still do that from the joint account. But
Now-
she has her money that she could spend however she wants. I'll never question
But
that.
it's not our money. Because the hot take was
the joint account. Is
let's
our
say
money.
you guys have a kid, she decides to stay home. What happens?
Well, I already pay all the expenses, so it's everything for her. She could spend it if she wants to.
Everything?
Yeah.
She could spend 10 grand a month.
How? Yeah. If she makes her money, she decides she wants to.
If she makes her money. I said if she stayed home with a kid. She has no traditional income now. What's your take on this, Jack? What do you think they should do?
What do I think?
Here's the thing. I've only seen it.
Realistically, like I think you go first.
No, I've only seen it where separate accounts has caused more marital strife than it caused any blessing. I've rarely seen it. And when it does cause any blessing, it's because they've brushed it under the rug and they're like, well, we just don't talk about it. It's he does his thing, I do my thing. We have the shared account. And I'm like, you're living like roommates. Like you're like, if you're Venmoing if you're married and you're sending each other Venmos, you're doing it wrong. That's not a marriage. Like marriage is we are becoming one in every way, shape, and form. We're sharing a bed, we're sharing DNA, we're making babies, but we can't share a bank account. That's insane.
So 2 things. If I were in Graham's position, this is a big if, I'd probably want separate accounts. That's just me saying but I think that this is a really tough line to kind of toe. But I also think that like if it's actually me, I also at the same time, I understand like having joint, because if you just split it 50-50 with Graham's amount of money, I'd still be fine. You know what I mean? I know I'll never need the amount of money. I don't even think I would necessarily love to have one. I don't think it would improve my life to have the amount of money that Graham currently has, let alone half. You know?
Don't ever give him a raise. He said he's fine.
I try to negotiate with Jack, and he wants more.
Drives a hard bargain.
He says one thing, but he does another.
It's like, I want to make less, so I have to grind
but
harder.
I don't have half of the amount of money you have.
No. Sure.
Right? So I think that there is a difference there, but that's besides the point. I think I would be okay splitting it because I know I'd be fine with half, but it would be extremely hard to part with that money. That's obviously worst case scenario. I don't even think that should be in question relative to the sadness of splitting with a partner that you're supposed to spend the rest of your life with. But I don't know. I think like for me in my current state, I'd probably be fine joint. But then again, like I'm not Graham. I don't have the amount of money Graham has. So I think it's different. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
Yeah.
And also like the money isn't necessarily something that you're like you're putting a value on the relationship. It's just like, hey, I worked extremely hard for this, and this is something that I just prefer to keep to myself. Like there are secrets, sure, that people will go into marriage with. It's inevitable. You can say, oh, you should talk about everything. You don't, right? There are certain things that you'll just hold to yourself till the day you die. And that's totally fine. And people are different. And if someone has a different value, and if it works for a certain couple, then it works. You could look at statistics and all available data and say, oh, it generally doesn't work. But I think that there are also going to be exceptions to the statistics.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So,
it's not saying that Graham and Macy won't have a long, healthy, happy marriage.
Of course.
I just think there's less of a chance, less risk of, financial infidelity, as we call it, where there's a lack of transparency and I didn't know, and there's resentment building up. Because again, if she stays home or has a much lower income and it's now unfair because Graham makes this, that it just causes more awkwardness in the relationship.
I understand. I think that's where the transparency comes in. And I think that's like the key to it all is being completely honest with each other. So in my current life, I probably would have joint accounts, but this is one of the few things where I understand the way that Graham's brain works.
That's fair.
Very few things. I'm like, why do you think the way that you do?
People love
and this I actually get
when
it.
you guys were on my YouTube channel, people love the relationship talk. And they also thought Jack was a very eligible bachelor.
Yeah,
there
they
in
did.
the YouTube comments.
Jack, find someone from
I was
George's
having a good
channel.
hair day.
Seriously,
That's why.
dude.
That was a
That's
good
why.
hair
That
day.
was a
having
good
a
hair
day.
day.
And you know what?
To be fair,
I did a blow dryer.
You did a blow dryer?
Did you use my strategy?
Didn't do a blow
Didn't.
dryer.
You didn't. I told you the
I
blow
used the
dryers
blow
are
dryer.
bad.
I used it that day. And
I think it's
great.
time. I told you I was gonna give you a little quaff to see what it looks like up there.
No,
Unwilling?
I'm unwilling.
And you know what's hilarious?
Dang it.
I used a blow dryer on the podcast we did with Dr. John
Yeah?
Delaney. Worst hair I've ever had.
Oh.
You gotta learn how to use a
there's
blow
something,
dryer.
something
We'll get you
between the
strategy.
two.
We're gonna
heat
get this thing
setting or
dialed in
something.
where every day it's super consistent.
Yeah,
That's
I
what-
would buy a course if you could maybe craft.
That's
one
my new course. It's
Yeah.
not gonna be about money. It's about how to care for your hair.
up. Right
How much would you pay?
for your course.
Yeah, more than you'd pay for a gallon of Graham's bathwater, hopefully.
Do you accept credit? Because then I'd probably pay a little bit more.
Or
I'll
crypto.
take
You take crypto?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
If you donated crypto for the course, I would take it.
$20.
That way, I never
$20.
bought crypto. I was donated crypto
Yeah.
from Jack.
There we go.
I like the hairstyle you had that was similar to mine. Remember that? You got a haircut that was like very
He just wants me
similar.
slowly over time to change into
To
him.
morph into Graham.
He wants
Kind
me to
of,
actually
yeah.
change my name to Graham Stafford.
Well, between
do.
your hair and then Graham's workout routine where he just exploded, I was like, I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on with you guys.
Yeah.
Like, did you work with
I've regressed a little bit, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
Food poisoning. I just not been to the gym as much. Wow. Yeah, it's been like a week.
Are
and a
you
half.
doing okay now?
Yeah, I'm fine now.
You're just shriveling away before our eyes.
I'm down 5 pounds, believe it or not.
Dang.
Yeah. But yeah. So the downside of those 5 pounds, half of that is muscle.
yeah.
That's
So
fair.
I've lost 2.5 pounds of muscle, 2.5 pounds
That's
of
the
fat.
key to not
though.
working out. I stay
Yeah.
the same consistently.
That's
Got to eat
smart.
more then.
10 years in.
Yeah.
What can I say?
All right. Cool. I think that's good.
George,
Is there
thank
any
you
other
so
thing that we
much.
should discuss? Anything we're
I
missing
mean,
out on?
I don't know if we have any other arguments. I mean, there's a lot more to unpack from this, but that's for another time, another day. But if people do want to check it out, they can do that at ramseysolutions.com/store. Check out Breaking Free
Appreciate
from
it,
Broke.
man.
Wherever books are sold. I'm really proud of it. The audiobook is like a whole produced thing. So if they're listening before January 16th, I don't know that they
We
will
might
be.
post this sooner.
And let me
They'll get all the pre-order bonuses for free, like
All right.
audiobook, ebook,
Cool.
all that.
let me also say this. I belly laughed several times.
You did.
Yes,
I
several
tried to
times.
make it really funny.
It sounds exactly like you.
Like
a
we
lot
were
of the
talking.
times, yes. Like I will read it and hear your voice as I'm reading it.
That means the world.
And it's hilarious. And a lot of the times people will make books and it just sounds nothing like them. Could be
Yeah.
a ghostwriter. Sounds exactly like you. I
There's
love
no
it.
way a ghostwriter could have written this because it is my jokes, whether good or bad. You can tell they are mine, and so I did try really hard to make a money book that was conversational, funny, well researched, that could help anybody, and while being true to myself and true to Ramsey. So I'm really proud of it. The team's done an amazing job. I mean, God bless. I feel bad for people who are doing this on their own.
Yeah.
Like authors that are doing this on their own, it's so much work. And so even though I wrote the book, it took 1 billion people to make this happen, and I'm really excited about it. It's selling really well. People are excited to read it, and the audiobook is going to be fire. So if you like to listen, this is the one for you. I
Why
like to
is
read
it-
books while
Yeah.
listening to the audiobook. Do you guys do that?
No.
Listen to 3 books.
I read the book while the audio is piped into my ears because that's how the level of like ADD that I have.
That's
So it
good.
helps me focus.
There are studies that show that you actually retain more knowledge when you're reading, when you're doing that.
Thank you for that.
So,
I
got
knew
you.
you had a study.
Yeah.
Were you having a good hair day that day?
You know, I think I was. I was nervous
Yeah.
about photo shoot day. You're always scared about like how did I sleep? What does my face look like? The team did not do me any favors, and they didn't give me like a tan in post.
The only thing I was gonna
I
say,
look like I'm
I
ghostly.
would up the saturation. It seems like you are too white, like too pale.
Well, to be
And in
fair,
person,
against
you're not
that bright orange, I think anything would be
It's
better.
Yeah.
this little corner right
Yes.
there on your forehead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little too pale.
I'll talk
It
to the
looks like
team
you're getting
about
a
that.
solid extra inch on the hair, though.
They could have photoshopped that a little higher.
The hair.
I'm gonna talk to our design guys. They did
Just have
whiten
it go
my
to the
shoes a
very
little bit,
top.
which helped. They whitened my shoes.
Print it on like 5 copies where the hair goes behind the text.
It's like
right
full
there.
Jimmy Neutron.
Yeah.
That would
On
be
5
amazing.
The back
copies.
folds.
No,
up.
truthfully, you know it's not
Goes over
Photoshop
that.
because I would have made them make me taller in post.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm small on the cover, which is
I wouldn't
sad.
say so. I think you look,
But I think they did it. They polished the shirt on this one. I think they did a great job with the cover.
it's gorgeous. Yeah.
And I hope I just wanted to stand out. Like in all the noise in the financial
does.
world, that's the whole point of this is to stand out in the crowd and swim upstream.
I love it.
So I hope this book pisses a lot of people off into breaking free
It
from
certainly
broke.
it pissed me off. Well,
Done
I'm
piss me
angry.
off. I say this is gonna be
Yeah.
jarring. This is not gonna be what you
Yeah.
want to hear.
Right.
It's sort of like it's the vegan documentary where they're like, here's how they actually make the meat. And you're like, oh gosh, that's what I wanted for Debt.
okay.
And I think it did that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We'll link to your information down below in the description. Thank you for making it to Vegas.
Absolutely.
We'll see you in Nashville.
It's an honor. And make sure to just slam that subscribe. Who's not subscribed at this
Guys,
point?
we're
to Iced
racing
Coffee
Caleb
Hour?
Hammer to 1 million subscribers.
Oh!
If you could
Oh, we wanna
please
beat
just
Caleb
get us to 1 million
Hammer.
before Caleb. He's
Beat
like 20K
Caleb.
ahead of us.
Is he actually?
He's like 15, maybe 20K ahead of us. Yeah. We need subscribers.
I think we need a new hashtag.
wow,
Beat
guys.
Caleb.
So we got to beat Caleb 2 million. If you're not subscribed, I think it's like 50% of people watching or higher with the shorts are
Our
not
powers
subscribed.
combined,
Please
we can
subscribe.
beat Caleb. I think 3 of us equals at least 1
Wow.
Caleb.
Cool.
Oh, and then
thumbnail?
Yeah, thumbnail.
Ooh, what's my? Come on in.
Well,
oh my
so-
goodness.
We have a bit of a surprise for you. Now, this was completely
Who
unplanned.
is this man?
This man is going to give you the best steak you've ever had. Guess how much this box is worth.
Oh my gosh. Based on the branding alone
Yeah.
and the weight, I'm gonna go $175.
You're actually spot on.
Are you serious? $25 off. What is in this?
Open the box.
Open
I'm
the box,
so
George.
nervous.
This is pretty much the ultimate Las Vegas flex. Look at
Oh
that.
my gosh. Look at what's in
Oh,
here.
come on. That looks so good.
This was freshly made in the kitchen 10 minutes ago.
How is this
You're getting
possible?
the freshest possible sandwich that you could ever eat. And it's right here. With, by the way, the best quality meat. This is not sponsored.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
what kind of
at
meat
all?
is this?
Correct me if I'm saying this wrong. It's Japanese Miyazaki A5 Wagyu.
A5
Wow.
Wagyu.
And it's
Whole
made in a
box is
sandwich.
A5.
This is $200 in this tiny box.
Yes. Yeah.
To what do we owe this pleasure?
Okay, so basically these guys reached out to us on Instagram and they're like, "Hey, we'd love to bring you a sandwich and film a little video for it." We tried the sandwich.
It was so good.
Insane.
How can
it
it
was
not be?
so
This
good?
is
And that was
nuts.
yesterday.
Yeah.
And then we're like, "Hey, we're actually shooting with George.
Come back.
Yeah.
Come back tomorrow and we could show it on our podcast." So, yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
bonus clip for you guys.
I don't deserve this.
Expensive
Yeah.
sandwich.
I'm not worth
We
this.
figured as like a frugal guy, you would appreciate this a lot. Eat it.
Okay.
I want to watch you eat it.
If you guys are in Vegas and you guys want to try this out, it's all going to be linked down below.
Yeah.
Definitely try it out.
All right. Can we
And
do
again,
it at the same time?
not sponsored.
No,
it's
not
just
at all. They just brought
this.
us food.
This is just a cool concept, and we
Yeah.
really like it.
Cheers.
So that's it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Touch meat.
All right.
There we go.
Yeah, now that you say it that way, it feels different. I'm gluten free. Can I just take a bite of the steak? Is that okay with you guys?
Does the steak have gluten in it?
Fine.
It's fine.
Oh my gosh.
Is that incredible? That's probably the best steak you've ever had.
That cow
It's
lived
so
a better
good.
life than I lived.
It's so good.
They're so tender. I've never had steak that melts in your mouth.
Say hi to all the vegetarians.
I'm sorry, but you're wrong. Like, if you think the Lord didn't intend for us to eat this, you're just wrong.
Oh my gosh!
I gotta hang out with you guys more often.
I told you.
Do you want a piece of this meat stick, Sarah?
Oh my gosh.
Sure, I'll try it.